The courtroom was packed. A hushed silence had fallen over the room, the kind that only accompanies a high-profile case. This wasn't just any lawsuit, it was the courtroom battle between tech giant Elon Musk and one of his fiercest business rivals. Cameras were flashing outside the building, and reporters leaned in close, their microphones ready to capture every word spoken inside. People were watching from all corners of the world, eager for a glimpse of the man who had reshaped industries and made history with his bold moves. But today, the courtroom was about to witness something no one could have predicted. Elon Musk strode into the room, his usual confidence radiating from him as he took his seat. With every step, the chatter in the room seemed to pause, as if everyone was holding their breath, wondering how the man who had single-handedly taken on some of the world's most powerful figures was going to handle this. Musk wasn't known for backing down. His ventures, from SpaceX to Tesla, had made him a legend, but today he was here for a very different reason. The judge, a middle-aged man with a reputation for quick decisions and a sharp wit, glared down from his bench. His reputation had been built on no-nonsense rulings, and today, he seemed to have an especially pointed edge. He was known for dismissing any nonsense and cutting straight to the heart of the matter. The case was simple on the surface. Musk was accused of using his company's influence to sabotage a rival's business in an effort to corner the market on a new technology. But it was deeper than that. This was a battle for power, for control, and for the very future of tech itself. Everyone in the courtroom understood the stakes. The whispers had already started circulating about how the case could change the landscape of the tech industry forever. But then, something unexpected happened. As Musk's lawyer presented their opening argument, the judge leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and let out a short, sharp laugh. "Mr. Musk," the judge said with a sly grin, "do you seriously expect us to believe that you didn't have anything to do with this? You, of all people, claim to be innocent in a matter like this? You've made billions by playing the game to your advantage, and now you expect us to think otherwise?" The courtroom went still. Even Musk's lawyer paused for a moment, clearly caught off guard by the judge's sarcasm. The laughter wasn't kind, it was mocking, dismissive. Musk's face remained unreadable, his posture unshaken, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Something that made the judge pause, just for a second. "Judge," Musk's lawyer began, his voice calm but with a tinge of irritation, "with all due respect, my client is being unfairly targeted here. We'll prove, beyond a doubt, that these claims are baseless." But the judge wasn't having it. "Oh, I'm sure you will, Mr. Henderson. But Musk here is used to getting exactly what he wants. How do we know he didn't orchestrate all of this? I mean, the man practically runs his own country at this point." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The tension in the air thickened. Musk, however, wasn't bothered. His eyes stayed locked on the judge, but the smile that began to form on his lips was unsettling, almost too confident. It was as though he had anticipated this moment, and was preparing to do something that would flip the entire case on its head. For a second, the judge's laughter died down, but there was still an undercurrent of doubt in his voice. "Well, Mr. Musk, if you're so innocent, I'm sure you won't mind us asking a few more questions. Let's see if you can wiggle your way out of this one." Elon shifted in his seat, his hand sliding into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. It was an uncharacteristic move, a signal that something was coming, a move he'd been preparing for, one that no one in the room could have anticipated. A gasp rippled through the courtroom as Musk slowly pulled out something shiny from his pocket. He held it up for all to see. It was a badge, distinct, authoritative, and undeniably official. The courtroom fell silent. "This," Musk said, his voice cutting through the tension, "is my U.S. Secret Service badge." The judge froze. His eyes widened, and for a split second, it seemed as if time itself had come to a standstill. The smugness that had so often characterized his demeanor vanished, replaced by an unmistakable look of disbelief. The room was silent. Everyone waited for the judge to respond, but he said nothing. Instead, he stared at the badge in Musk's hand like a man seeing something he had never imagined in his wildest dreams. Musk's lawyer leaned forward, catching his breath, clearly as stunned as everyone else. The opposing lawyer, too, was momentarily speechless. There was no way to recover from this. The judge cleared his throat, his earlier confidence evaporating. "Mr. Musk," he began, though his voice now lacked its former authority, I don't understand. Why would you?" Musk cut him off, his tone still steady but now with an edge of cold finality. "You'll understand soon enough, Your Honor. But for now, let's just say that I'm here as much to protect my interests as I am to protect this country's future. If you're still questioning whether I'm involved in this, you'll soon have your answer." The room buzzed with confusion, curiosity, and fear. What had Musk just revealed? What kind of game was he playing? Had he really been working with the government all along, and if so, what did that mean for this case? The judge took a moment to compose himself, still visibly shaken by the sight of the badge. He had seen many things in his career, but this was something entirely different. Musk wasn't just a billionaire tech mogul, he was someone with serious connections, someone who played by rules most people could never even comprehend. "Mr. Musk," the judge finally said, his voice no longer mocking, but filled with uncertainty, "you've thrown a lot of weight into this. But let me be clear, you'll have to explain this, and soon." But Musk's smile only deepened, his eyes gleaming with something that resembled both victory and amusement. "I'll explain when the time is right, Your Honor," he said, "but first, let's get back to the facts at hand. My innocence is clear. Let's see if we can prove that, shall we?" As the judge nodded silently, the entire courtroom was on edge, the question hanging in the air: what had Musk just done? And what did this mean for the outcome of the case? The story was just beginning, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk's life had never been one to follow the typical script. From an early age, he had been driven by a singular force, an insatiable curiosity and a relentless need to push boundaries. The world around him seemed small, and it often felt like he was destined for something far greater. But as with all extraordinary lives, there was a price to pay for greatness, and Musk had learned that lesson early. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, on June 28, 1971, Elon's childhood was anything but ordinary. His parents, May and Errol, were both highly intelligent, with his mother being a dietitian and his father an electromechanical engineer. Musk had inherited his parents' intellect, but perhaps it was his mother's determination and quiet strength that truly shaped him. His early years were spent in a family that encouraged ambition, but there was a weight to those expectations that Musk would come to understand all too well. Musk's childhood was far from carefree. He was a voracious reader, often spending hours immersed in science fiction books, dreaming of a future far beyond the limits of the world around him. His peers, however, did not share his interests. In fact, Elon was often bullied at school, an experience that would scar him for years. The relentless teasing, the sense of not fitting in, became a part of his DNA, fueling the fire that would eventually make him the man he was today. But as with many difficult childhoods, there was something transformative in that pain. It forged a resilience in Musk, a determination to prove to the world, and perhaps to himself, that he was more than the sum of his circumstances. By the age of 12, Elon had already taught himself computer programming. He created a video game called Blaster, which he sold for $500. It was a small victory in a world that had yet to recognize his potential, but it planted the seed for a future that seemed as distant and out of reach as the stars themselves. When Musk was 17, he left South Africa to attend Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. It was a decision that would change the course of his life. He would later transfer to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned degrees in both economics and physics. It was there that he first encountered the philosophy of building something that would outlive him, a concept that resonated deeply with him. Musk wasn't just interested in making money, he wanted to change the world, and he wanted to do it in ways that no one had ever imagined. But it wasn't until he moved to California, to attend Stanford University for a PhD in applied physics and materials science, that his true journey began. Musk dropped out of Stanford just 2 days into his program, choosing instead to dive headfirst into the world of entrepreneurship. It was a risky move, but one that would define his life. His first major venture, Zip2, was a software company he co-founded with his brother, Kimball. It provided online city guides for newspapers. The company was eventually sold to Compaq for $307 million in 1999, a sum that seemed almost unimaginable at the time. For Musk, it was the first taste of success, and it was only the beginning. His next venture, X.com, would eventually become PayPal, and from there, the story of Musk's rise to billionaire status unfolded. But as his wealth grew, so did the challenges. Musk found himself at the helm of multiple companies, each one with its own set of problems, deadlines, and pressures. Tesla, SpaceX, SolarCity, each of these companies would become synonymous with his name, and each one would face near collapses, personal sacrifices, and moments of doubt. At times, it felt as though Musk was walking a tightrope, balancing on the edge of failure and triumph, with every decision potentially tipping him either way. He had sacrificed relationships, sleep, and even his mental health in his relentless pursuit of his goals. His personal life had been a series of ups and downs, with marriages, divorces, and a growing family. Yet, through it all, his vision remained clear. He was determined to create a future where humanity could thrive beyond Earth. But it wasn't just business or technology that fueled Musk. There was a deeper drive within him, one that was born out of his desire to leave a legacy that would stand the test of time. Musk had always believed that the fate of humanity was tied to the stars, that the future of the human race would depend on whether we could become a multiplanetary species. This idea had consumed him, driving him to build SpaceX, a company with a singular mission, to make space travel affordable and accessible. Musk's efforts at SpaceX were nothing short of legendary. There were multiple failures, including the first 3 launches of the Falcon 9 rocket, all of which failed spectacularly. Musk put his own money on the line, betting everything he had on the success of his venture. But against all odds, SpaceX eventually succeeded, and today, it is a company that stands on the precipice of revolutionizing space exploration. Musk's focus on Mars, his belief that humanity's future lay in becoming an interplanetary species, drove him to relentlessly push the boundaries of what was possible. And then, there was Tesla. At first, people thought Musk was out of his mind. Electric cars were seen as impractical, expensive toys for the wealthy. But Musk's vision was clear, a sustainable future where humanity could move away from fossil fuels. He pushed Tesla to the brink more times than anyone could count, using his fortune to fund the company through periods of extreme financial hardship. But in the end, Tesla prevailed, becoming a symbol of innovation and environmental responsibility. Through all the highs and lows, Musk had one thing that kept him grounded, his unwavering belief that the future could be better, that it could be different. He wasn't just building companies, he was building a new world, one where humanity could escape the limitations of Earth and venture into the stars. But as the court case unfolded, Musk found himself in a position that no one could have predicted. The judge, who had once been mocking him, now stared at him in disbelief, unsure of what to make of the man standing before him. But Elon Musk wasn't someone who could be easily understood. His past, his experiences, and his vision for the future were the driving forces behind everything he did. And as this battle played out in court, Musk's determination to protect his legacy, and his secrets, was just beginning to take shape. His success had not come easily, and neither would his victory in this case. But one thing was certain, Elon Musk never gave up. Not on business. Not on his vision. And certainly not on himself. As the courtroom drama continued to unfold, the world watched, wondering just what Musk would do next. The judge's laughter had faded, replaced by an air of uncertainty. What had Musk just revealed, and what did it mean for everyone involved? It was clear that the battle was far from over, and Elon Musk was just getting started. As the court proceedings continued, the tension between Elon Musk and the legal system reached a fever pitch. The judge's initial laughter had given way to confusion, but that confusion quickly turned into something more dangerous for those in the courtroom. Musk had taken them by surprise, showing a side of himself that few had ever witnessed. A man who had built empires with his companies, Musk had now revealed a side of his life that seemed to transcend business itself, an alliance with the U.S. Secret Service. The judge, visibly unsettled, had called for a recess. He needed time to process what Musk had just done, to make sense of the implications that this revelation had on the entire case. The opposing counsel, who had earlier mocked Musk's credibility, was now pacing in his office, speaking in hushed tones with his associates. No one had expected this turn of events, least of all the prosecutor, who was certain that this trial would be an easy win. But Musk wasn't concerned with their doubts or their confusion. If anything, the look in his eyes had grown colder, more resolute. He wasn't just defending his reputation or protecting his companies. He was protecting something far greater, something far more valuable than money or even success. Musk had always been a man with a mission, and now he was showing just how far he was willing to go to protect it. As the recess stretched on, Musk's lawyer, Richard Henderson, sat across from him, clearly trying to contain his shock. "Mr. Musk," Henderson finally said, breaking the silence, "I've seen a lot of things in my career, but that was something else. What exactly do you mean by U.S. Secret Service? You can't just wave that badge around without repercussions. If you're trying to intimidate the judge, it's working. But it could also backfire." Musk leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant as if lost in thought. He knew the risks. He had calculated them, as he always did. But this was bigger than any lawsuit. This was about more than just protecting his interests, it was about ensuring that his vision for the future remained untarnished. "I'm not trying to intimidate anyone, Richard," Musk replied calmly. "I'm trying to make it clear that I'm not just some tech CEO fighting for a few $1 billion. I'm involved in something far larger. And if they want to try and tear me down, they'll have to understand the power that stands behind me." Richard's eyes narrowed. "I get it, but you've got to be careful. The court might take that as a threat, not a declaration of intent. You're playing with fire, Elon." Musk didn't respond right away. He stared out the window, watching the passing cars below as though lost in some other world, one where the courtroom drama didn't matter. He had faced adversity before, he had faced it every day of his life. And he had come out on top, every time. But this time felt different. His thoughts drifted back to the moment years earlier when he had made the decision to join forces with the U.S. government, seeking their support in his quest to push humanity to Mars. It was a move he had not taken lightly, one that had come with more than its share of risks. But if he could align himself with the right people, the right organizations, it would give him the leverage to push through his vision for space exploration, and perhaps even reshape the future of the planet. The truth was, Musk had a lot of secrets that, if exposed, could change everything. He had always known the stakes, and he had always prepared for the day when those secrets might come to light. But revealing his connection to the U.S. Secret Service? That wasn't something he had planned. He hadn't expected the courtroom battle to escalate this quickly. And now, with the judge reeling and his opponents scrambling, he knew he needed to stay one step ahead. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom as the recess came to an end. The judge was ready to continue, but the atmosphere had shifted. It was no longer a simple business dispute. It had become something more dangerous. The judge returned to the bench, his face still shadowed with uncertainty. He took a deep breath before addressing the room. "Mr. Musk," he began, his voice noticeably more cautious than before, "I'm still trying to wrap my head around what you've shown us today. A U.S. Secret Service badge. You'll need to explain this fully, and soon. We're not playing games here. Musk stood up slowly, his tall frame exuding quiet confidence. He didn't seem in the least bit perturbed by the judge's words. Instead, he locked eyes with him, a steady gaze that seemed to hold 100 unspoken truths. Your Honor, Musk replied, his voice measured and deliberate, I'm not here to play games. I'm here to ensure that the truth is heard. And the truth is that I have always acted with the greater good in mind, whether that's pushing for a sustainable future with Tesla or ensuring that humanity has a backup plan on Mars with SpaceX. I don't need to defend myself, but if you want answers, I'll give them to you. But I need you to understand this is bigger than me. This is about the future of the planet, and I won't allow anyone to jeopardize that. The courtroom held its breath. The tension was palpable. The judge, for a moment, seemed to soften, but only slightly. He wasn't going to back down so easily, not after everything that had transpired. Musk could feel the weight of his words hanging in the air, the pressure of everyone's eyes trained on him. But he didn't flinch. We'll get to the bottom of this, the judge finally said, though his tone was far less certain than before. But I won't be bullied into making decisions I'm not comfortable with. You've thrown the world a curveball, Mr. Musk. Now, let's see if you can catch it. The rising conflict in the courtroom had reached a boiling point. Musk's opponents were rattled, unsure of how to proceed. The revelation of the Secret Service connection had taken them by surprise, and they knew they would need more than just legal expertise to take Musk down. They had to find a way to break him, to undermine his credibility. But Musk wasn't going to make it easy for them. He had already weathered the storms of failure and ridicule throughout his life. A courtroom battle? That was just another obstacle to overcome. The stage was set, and the conflict had only just begun. The following days were marked by a steady, unrelenting pace in the courtroom. Every session brought a new twist, a new revelation, and a new layer to the mystery that surrounded Elon Musk. What had once seemed like a simple legal dispute over business practices had morphed into something far more complex, a battle for control, not just of Musk's companies, but of his future. The truth, it seemed, was not something that could be easily hidden or brushed aside. For Elon, the courtroom had become a battlefield. He had always known that his success would attract both admiration and animosity, but this was different. The case had taken on a life of its own, and as the days passed, the legal drama was no longer about protecting his fortune or defending his honor. It was about something more profound, a reckoning with the forces that sought to control him, to undermine his vision, and to strip away the secrets he had so carefully guarded. But the rising tension wasn't confined to the courtroom. Outside the walls of the courthouse, the media was abuzz. News outlets around the world were following every twist and turn of the trial, broadcasting every word spoken in the courtroom to a global audience. People had begun to speculate on what Musk's connection to the U.S. Secret Service really meant. Some saw it as a stroke of genius, proof that Musk was playing on an entirely different level. Others, however, viewed it as a sign of something far more sinister, a web of intrigue that could unravel at any moment. Musk's personal life had also come under scrutiny. Headlines focused not just on his business ventures, but on his relationships, his habits, and his eccentricities. There were whispers about his marriages, his infamous social media posts, and his unyielding obsession with space. To some, he was a visionary, to others, a man teetering on the edge of madness. But for Musk, none of it mattered. The stakes had always been higher than anything the media could focus on. He was used to the noise, the speculation, the constant bombardment of attention. What he had built with Tesla, SpaceX, and the other companies under his banner was not just a legacy, it was a movement. A movement he couldn't let be derailed by anything or anyone. As the days wore on, the courtroom drama took on an almost surreal quality. The judge, once skeptical and dismissive of Musk's claims, had begun to show signs of hesitation. It was clear that Musk's connections ran deeper than anyone had imagined. The implications of the U.S. Secret Service badge were not just about authority, they were about power, power that Musk wielded in ways that no one, least of all the court, could fully understand. And then came the moment that would change everything. It was a day like any other in the trial when a new piece of evidence was introduced, something so shocking that it sent ripples through the courtroom. A sealed document, one that had been kept hidden until now, was presented to the judge. It was a government file, a file that detailed Musk's interactions with the U.S. government, including his secretive collaborations with agencies far beyond the public's knowledge. The document revealed a vast network of resources, investments, and technology sharing between Musk's companies and various government entities. Some of it was expected, but other parts of the file were completely unexpected. There were mentions of military-grade technology, classified missions, and references to a covert program Musk had been involved with, one that had been designed to accelerate the development of space exploration with government funding and support. The scale of the operation was staggering, and as the judge scanned through the pages, the weight of what Musk had been involved in seemed to settle heavily on the room. For the first time, the courtroom fell silent. The prosecution, who had assumed they were close to winning, now found themselves at a loss. The defense team, on the other hand, remained calm, though there was an undeniable air of satisfaction in their demeanor. They had been waiting for this moment, the moment when they would reveal that Musk's empire was far more interconnected with the world's most powerful institutions than anyone had realized. The defense attorney, Richard Henderson, stood up and addressed the judge with unwavering confidence. "Your Honor, I believe this document speaks for itself," Henderson said, his voice steady and calm. "Mr. Musk is not simply a business magnate. He is a man whose work has touched the very heart of this nation's security and future. The connections outlined here, while perhaps unexpected, are entirely legal and fall within the purview of Musk's companies. If anything, this proves that he is a visionary, a man working toward the survival and advancement of humanity itself." The prosecution, now visibly shaken, struggled to formulate a response. They had expected this trial to be a simple matter of business ethics, but now they were faced with something far more complicated. Musk was no longer just a tech entrepreneur, he was a key player in something much larger, something that no one could have predicted. The judge, too, seemed taken aback. He looked at Musk with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, unsure of what to make of the man before him. This wasn't just a legal case anymore, it had become a battle for control over something far more profound. Musk, meanwhile, sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. His eyes were fixed ahead, as if he were looking beyond the walls of the courtroom and into the future. It was clear to him now that the court case had become a turning point, not just for his companies, but for the entire trajectory of his vision for the future of humanity. This was no longer just about winning a lawsuit. This was about staking a claim on the future. And Musk wasn't about to let anyone take that from him. As the judge called for another brief recess, the world outside the courtroom was abuzz with speculation. The media was in overdrive, eager to break the news of the latest developments. But for Musk, this was just another step on a journey he had long ago set in motion. The journey was far from over, and the road ahead would be even more difficult than anything he had faced so far. But Musk was no stranger to adversity. He had always been willing to risk everything for what he believed in. And now, more than ever, he was ready to face whatever came next. The climactic journey had only just begun. The air in the courtroom had thickened with the weight of the revelations. Everyone could feel it, the tension had escalated beyond legal jargon, beyond business disputes. It was now a war of ideals, a battle between those who believed in Musk's vision and those who saw him as a dangerous figure, someone whose reach extended too far. Musk had always prided himself on his ability to think in terms of the long game, but today was different. As the recess ended and the courtroom reconvened, the stakes had never felt higher. He had always been prepared to face challenges, to defend his ideas, and now, he knew he had to stand firm not only for his empire but for everything he believed humanity needed. When the judge returned to the bench, his eyes were sharper, more focused. He had been given time to process the shocking government document, and now, with that knowledge weighing heavily on him, he seemed more than ready to continue. "Mr. Musk," the judge began, his voice steady but with a hard edge, "you've presented us with a complex picture of your involvement with the U.S. government. I need you to understand that what we're dealing with here is much larger than a business case. You've shown us just how deep your connections run. But there are consequences. The court needs full transparency. No more secrets." Musk met the judge's gaze without hesitation. He wasn't just responding to the judge's words, he was responding to the overwhelming pressure that had been building throughout the case. The eyes of the world were on him, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. But this was the moment he had prepared for. He knew that what he said here and now would shape not just the outcome of the case but the future of his vision. "I understand the gravity of this situation, Your Honor," Musk said, his voice unwavering. "But what you have to understand is that everything I've done, every decision I've made, was done with a singular purpose: to advance humanity. To ensure that we're not solely reliant on this planet, that we have options, that we don't end up with nowhere to go when the inevitable happens." He paused, taking a breath. His words hung in the air, like a quiet challenge. "I've been trying to solve the hardest problems, problems that, frankly, most people are too scared to face. Space exploration, energy sustainability, artificial intelligence. These aren't just business ventures to me. These are lifelines for the future. And if I have to make tough decisions, if I have to work with the government, the military, anyone, to push those solutions forward, then I will. Because I believe it's worth it." For a moment, there was silence in the room. Musk's words had cut through the legal drama and into something more fundamental, something that resonated not just with the people in the courtroom but with the world outside. What had once been an obscure courtroom fight had now turned into a global discussion about the future of humanity, and Musk was at the center of it. The prosecutor, who had been silent until now, stood up, his face flushed with frustration. "Mr. Musk," he said, his voice tinged with anger, "you cannot sit here and justify your actions by invoking some lofty ideal. This is a court of law. What we're here to determine is whether you have broken the law, not whether you have a grand vision for the future. Your connections to these government entities, your secret dealings, they don't belong in a court of law. They belong in an investigation, where the public can have their say." Musk stood up, his eyes narrowing as he met the prosecutor's gaze. The room seemed to grow colder as the two men locked eyes. The prosecutor, used to being the one with the upper hand, seemed to falter under Musk's unwavering stare. There was something in Musk's expression, something beyond the legal battle, that sent a chill down the prosecutor's spine. Musk wasn't simply fighting for his reputation or his businesses, he was fighting for something far more important. "You don't get it, do you?" Musk's voice was low but firm. "This isn't about legality. This is about survival. We're on the edge of a future we can't predict. And I will do whatever it takes to ensure that humanity has a chance to thrive in that future. If you want to focus on laws and contracts, then I'll leave you to it. But if you want to understand the magnitude of what I'm doing, you'll have to think beyond your narrow perspective." The prosecutor took a step back, clearly taken aback by Musk's intensity. For a moment, he was at a loss for words. The judge, who had been watching the exchange with increasing scrutiny, spoke up. "Mr. Musk, you've made your case. But we are not here to discuss your personal beliefs. We are here to determine whether you've broken any laws. And your connection with the U.S. government raises questions. Serious questions." Musk knew that the tide had turned. He was no longer just a businessman under scrutiny. He had become the symbol of a larger conversation about the future, about technology, about government control, and about what length someone would go to in order to shape that future. The emotional weight of it all pressed down on him, but he stood firm. "I'm not asking for your approval," Musk said, his voice quieter now, but still powerful. "I'm asking you to understand that sometimes, the rules we live by aren't enough. Sometimes, we need to break those rules to build something better. I'm not a villain. I'm trying to build the future. The words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though the entire courtroom was holding its breath. Musk had laid himself bare. He had exposed his core beliefs, his driving force. It was clear that this was no longer about legalities, it was about an ideological clash between two vastly different visions for the future. For Musk, this wasn't just a court case, it was a crucible. And he had emerged from it stronger than before. The judge, after a long pause, lowered his gavel. We will take a recess. But the questions raised today are significant. We will need time to consider them carefully. As the gavel came down, Musk sat back down in his seat. His hands were clenched, but his eyes remained steady. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And in that moment, Musk knew that he had won more than just a courtroom victory. He had made his mark on history. The recess had felt endless. It was as though time itself had stretched thin, wrapping the courtroom in a heavy silence that no one could escape. For the first time in the trial, Musk allowed himself to exhale, though the weight of the moment lingered. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting momentarily to the ceiling. Despite the media circus, the courtroom drama, and the legal battle that had ensnared him, one thing was clear: he had survived this confrontation. And, more than that, he had begun to shift the narrative. Outside, the world continued to buzz with speculation. News outlets were flooded with reports, with headlines questioning Musk's future, but also praising him for his boldness. Musk had become something of a global icon, the underdog in a court of law, but a hero to millions who saw him as the future of progress. For the first time, Musk allowed himself to feel the weight of that responsibility. He had always been driven by a desire to push boundaries, to see the world in a different way, but this had made it real. His words, his actions, were now part of a much larger story, one that would echo through the generations. When the gavel struck again, signaling the end of the recess, the room came back to life. The judge, who had remained silent through the break, finally spoke. "Mr. Musk," the judge began, his voice resonating with the authority of someone who had seen the weight of history unfold before him. "After reviewing the documents presented and considering the arguments made, I find that while your connections and actions are undoubtedly unconventional, they do not, in this case, constitute a violation of the law. However," he continued, his voice growing more somber, "this case is far from over. There are questions that still need to be answered. The world is watching, and we must proceed with transparency." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, no one in the courtroom dared to speak. Musk felt the stirrings of a hard-earned relief, though he knew better than to assume victory was his just yet. This was a battle, one of many he had fought and would continue to fight. But today, he had won something far greater than the case at hand. The prosecutor, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, opened his mouth to object. But the judge's stern look silenced him before he could utter a word. The message was clear: there was no room for theatrics here. It was time for resolution. "Mr. Musk," the judge continued, "you've made it clear that your intentions are rooted in a vision for the future, but intentions alone do not guide this court. Your actions, while lawful, will be under continued scrutiny. I expect full cooperation with ongoing investigations, as there are still aspects of your dealings that remain unclear. That said, the charges against you, at least as they currently stand, will be dismissed." The prosecutor, now visibly defeated, gave one last glare at Musk before exiting the room, no longer the confident adversary he had been just days earlier. Musk stood up, offering a brief nod to his legal team, who had fought tooth and nail alongside him. They, too, were worn but relieved. The case had been grueling, and though they had emerged victorious, the emotional toll had been heavy on all of them. The defense team filed out of the courtroom, but Musk remained behind, his mind spinning with the possibilities. What did the future hold for him now? What would the media say? And, most pressing of all, what did the government's continued interest mean for him and his companies? For now, the immediate storm had passed, but Musk knew that the road ahead would be anything but smooth. He had always embraced the chaos, had always relished the challenge. But this case had shown him just how dangerous that chaos could be. The secrets he had uncovered, the relationships he had forged, and the future he had set into motion were more delicate than he had ever imagined. As he stepped outside the courthouse, the familiar bustle of the city surrounded him. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing, their questions coming fast and furious. But Musk didn't respond to their inquiries. He didn't need to. His presence, his silence, spoke louder than any answer he could provide. And as he walked through the sea of reporters and onto the waiting car, his mind returned to the one thing that had always driven him, the future. He had faced his trial, but there was more to be done. More to create. More to fight for. He had won this battle. But the war was far from over. As the door of the car closed behind him, Musk allowed himself a moment of quiet. The weight of the courtroom had shifted, but the future, his future, remained as uncertain as ever. He couldn't escape the fact that his actions, his choices, were no longer just his own. They were entwined with the fate of the world. But in that moment, Musk felt a sense of clarity. His journey had only just begun. The emotional trials, the stakes, and the sacrifices had already reshaped him. He was no longer just a businessman. He was a pioneer, a man shaping the course of history. And, as the city's skyline faded into the distance, he knew he was ready for whatever came next. The world might never fully understand him, might never fully embrace his methods, but Musk had made peace with that. In the end, it was never about approval. It was about vision. And Musk's vision, no matter how unconventional, was just beginning to unfold. The days following the courtroom verdict felt like a blur to Elon Musk. He had emerged from the trial victorious, but his mind was far from at ease. He had made his case, spoken his truth, but now the real challenge began. The media, the public, and, most importantly, the government would all be watching him closely. What came next? The decision was in his hands, and the weight of it was not lost on him. As the headlines flooded news outlets, they were a mix of praise, criticism, and speculation. Some hailed Musk as a visionary who had overcome an unjust system, while others decried him as a danger to democracy, someone willing to push boundaries without regard for the consequences. The public's reaction was polarized, and Musk found himself at the center of a storm he had spent years creating but was now trying to navigate. For the first time in a long while, he couldn't escape the question that lingered in his mind: had he gone too far? He was no stranger to controversy. Musk's entire career had been built on taking risks, on daring to dream in ways that most others wouldn't. But this trial had revealed something different. It had shown him the fine line between ambition and recklessness, between progress and hubris. His connections with the U.S. government, the shadowy dealings, the secrecy, while all part of a greater mission, had placed him under the microscope in a way he hadn't anticipated. Musk sat in his office at SpaceX headquarters, his fingers tapping restlessly on the desk. His thoughts were a whirlwind, filled with the weight of the trial, the people he had alienated, and the consequences that could still come. He had never been one to shy away from a challenge, but he had never been so aware of the stakes. His phone buzzed, pulling him out of his reverie. It was a message from his legal team: the government is preparing to make an announcement. They're doubling down on their investigation into your dealings. Musk's heart skipped a beat. He had known the government wasn't going to let him go so easily, but this felt different. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about power, control, and the future. His future. The stakes had escalated, and now he was left to wonder how far he could push before the walls began to close in. Despite the tension that hung in the air, there was also an undeniable sense of resolve in Musk. He had never been one to back down. He had always believed that his vision was the right one, that he was fighting for the greater good, even if the world couldn't see it yet. But as the days passed, he found himself questioning if the price of that vision was higher than he was willing to pay. The following week, Musk was called in for another round of meetings with his top advisors. His legal team was still reeling from the unexpected twists and turns of the trial, and now, with the government preparing to escalate their investigation, the pressure was building once more. At the meeting, Musk's legal counsel sat around the table, their faces tense, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. One of them, Mark, a seasoned corporate lawyer, was the first to speak. "Elon, we're facing a serious situation. The government is doubling down. They're not just investigating your business dealings. They're looking into your personal connections, your role with agencies like the CIA and NSA. They're framing this as a matter of national security." Musk leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. This was the moment he had feared. It wasn't just the business world that he had to navigate anymore, it was the very core of the system itself. Musk had always prided himself on his ability to outmaneuver the competition, to disrupt the status quo. But now, he wasn't just disrupting business norms. He was challenging the structure of power. "I've always known this day would come," Musk said quietly. "But it's never been about national security. It's about preparing humanity for a future that's inevitable. Climate change, resource scarcity, the future of space exploration, it's all connected." Mark exchanged another look with the rest of the team before speaking again. "We understand that, Elon, but the government sees it differently. They're looking at this through the lens of secrecy and oversight. They're starting to question the scope of your operations. They're asking why someone with so much power and influence is so connected to government agencies. You need to be prepared for the fallout." Musk's mind raced. It wasn't just the government that was coming after him anymore. This had the potential to become something much bigger, something that could shake the very foundations of the empire he had built. But he had always known the risk. And he wasn't going to let fear of that risk stop him now. "Tell them whatever they need to hear," Musk said, his voice calm but determined. "I'll testify. I'll explain what I've been doing. And if they don't like it, that's on them. But I won't back down from what I believe in." Mark sighed, clearly concerned. "Elon, this isn't just about a few government agents asking questions. This could spark a full-scale investigation that could affect your companies. The SEC, Congress, they could all get involved. And it won't just be a matter of explaining your actions. It will be about political fallout." Musk looked around the room at his team, at the faces that had supported him through thick and thin. "I'm ready," he said, the resolve in his voice unwavering. "I've always known that what I'm doing isn't going to be easy. I'm willing to face the consequences. But I won't back down. I won't apologize for wanting a better future." The room fell silent as everyone took in his words. Musk wasn't just talking about business. He was talking about his vision for the future, his unyielding belief that humanity had to evolve, to move beyond Earth, to become a multiplanetary species. And he was willing to risk it all to see that vision come to life. Later that night, Musk sat alone in his office, staring out at the vast expanse of the stars. The weight of the world had never felt heavier, but in this quiet moment, he found a sense of clarity. His entire life had been shaped by the drive to change the world, to create something bigger than himself. He had always known it would be a battle. He had always known there would be forces that would push back against him. But he had also known that nothing worth achieving came easily. The path forward was uncertain, fraught with obstacles, but Musk was no stranger to adversity. He had been tested time and time again, and each time, he had come out stronger. He picked up his phone and sent a message to his team: "We fight on. Prepare for everything." He knew this wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a battle for the future of humanity. And he would not let anything, not the government or the media or the world's skepticism, stand in his way. The morning after Musk's decision to continue fighting the escalating government investigation, he awoke with a sense of purpose that burned brighter than ever. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with hurdles, but it was a path he had chosen long ago. His mind raced as he thought about the consequences. He knew that for all the successes he had achieved in business, this might very well be the defining moment of his life. This was bigger than Tesla. Bigger than SpaceX. This was about the legacy he would leave behind. He sat at his desk, sorting through the pile of papers that had accumulated over the course of the week. On top of the mountain of documents was a single letter, delivered with the customary formality of the government. It was from the Department of Justice. As he picked it up, the weight of it sent a chill down his spine. This letter would decide how the investigation would unfold, and whether his vision for the future could survive the scrutiny. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Sarah, his chief legal advisor, who had been working tirelessly to manage the ever-growing complexity of his situation. "Elon, we need to talk. The situation is escalating faster than we anticipated. We have new intel from inside the government. They're looking into more than just business practices now. This could be a full-scale political move." Musk didn't waste a moment. He grabbed his jacket, nodded to his assistant, and headed toward the conference room where his team was already gathered. As he entered, he noticed the tight expressions on the faces of those seated around the table. Everyone could feel it, the weight of the storm that was fast approaching. "Sarah, give me the full picture," Musk said, sitting down at the head of the table. His voice, though calm, had an edge to it that made everyone sit up a little straighter. She took a deep breath before speaking. "We've learned that there's a significant push from political forces inside Washington who are not just concerned with your companies, they're worried about your growing influence, your connections, and the precedent your actions could set. It's not just about one person or one company anymore. This is about control over the direction of the country, and potentially the world." Musk's mind raced. This was bigger than he had ever imagined. He knew his rise had drawn attention from the highest levels of power, but the way Sarah framed it was a stark reminder of just how far-reaching his ambitions had become. His desire to change the world had made him a lightning rod for those in power. "And what exactly are they accusing me of?" Musk asked, his tone still measured but now tinged with the hint of frustration. He had always prided himself on transparency, on being bold and honest about his intentions. To be seen as a threat, to be placed under such intense scrutiny, it felt surreal. "They're trying to paint you as a rogue operator," Sarah replied, shaking her head. "But the real question is how much political maneuvering is involved. There are whispers that the investigation is as much about your influence as it is about the company's. They think you're building something they can't control." Musk leaned back in his chair, taking in her words. There had always been detractors, people who had seen his rise as a threat. But now, it wasn't just the critics who mattered. It was the people in power who were beginning to feel the heat of his actions. They feared the future he was creating, the world where private industry and government no longer held the same power over the masses. "We knew this was coming," Musk said quietly. "It's never been about playing by the old rules. If they can't control the narrative, they'll try to silence it." He was no stranger to adversity. In fact, he had thrived in environments where the odds seemed stacked against him. But this was different. The weight of the government bearing down on him was something new, and no matter how prepared he felt, he couldn't help but wonder how far they would go to stop him. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "We have intel that the government is considering making public the extent of their investigation into your dealings with federal agencies. That would cause a political uproar, and it could lead to congressional hearings." Musk's expression hardened. Congressional hearings. The last thing he wanted was to be dragged into the public eye in a political circus. He had faced the media before, but this was on an entirely different scale. "What's the best-case scenario?" Musk asked, his voice steady but carrying an air of determination. He wasn't going to shy away from this. He needed a plan, one that would not only safeguard his interests but also protect the future he had worked so hard to create. Best case scenario? Sarah hesitated. We present ourselves as fully cooperative. We demonstrate that our intentions are rooted in innovation and not in undermining the government. But the real challenge will be keeping the focus on the future, on the work we're doing to push humanity forward. Musk nodded slowly. This wasn't going to be easy. The opposition wasn't just political, it was ideological. People feared the unknown, and Musk's ambition had always stretched beyond the limits of what they could imagine. We'll fight back, Musk said with resolve. But we'll do it smartly. I'll show them why this country needs innovation. Why the future of humanity depends on it. They can dig into my past, my connections, all they want, but they'll never stop the inevitable. As the days passed, Musk found himself thrust into the heart of a new battle. He continued to meet with his team, preparing for the political and legal firestorm that was coming. Public relations experts were called in to craft his narrative, ensuring that his story was told on his terms. The team's focus was on maintaining control over the narrative and ensuring that his innovations, particularly in space and clean energy, were front and center. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to unfold behind the scenes, and it became clear that the government was intent on digging deeper. Musk, ever the visionary, began to understand the true scope of the opposition he faced. This wasn't just about his companies, it was about a clash of ideologies. The government's old guard wanted to maintain control over industries, while Musk's vision was about decentralizing that power and giving it to the people. The next phase of the battle had begun, and there was no turning back. Later that night, as Musk sat alone in his office, reflecting on the challenges ahead, his phone buzzed once again. It was a message from an unexpected source, an old friend who had been involved in politics for years. Elon, this is bigger than you think. You need to be ready for the storm that's coming. Your influence is shaking up the very foundation of power. There are people who will stop at nothing to take you down. Musk stared at the message for a long moment. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks, he had become something more than a businessman. He had become a symbol. And with that symbol came a responsibility he had never fully understood until now. The storm was coming. And it was going to test everything he believed in. Musk knew that he had to take control of the narrative before the storm could overwhelm him. The pressure of the investigation, combined with the constant media scrutiny, was beginning to feel like a weight on his chest. But he had faced challenges before, and he knew that the key to survival was not to run from the conflict, but to meet it head-on. It was time to fight back. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and media appearances. He had his PR team crafting his message carefully, shaping the story of an innovator, not a threat. He knew that if he didn't tell his side of the story, others would. The government was already leaking information, and the media was running with it, casting him as a maverick playing a dangerous game with national security. But Musk wasn't just any entrepreneur. He wasn't going to play by the old rules. Elon, we've got to act fast, Sarah said one evening as they met in the boardroom. The longer we wait, the more the narrative will slip out of our hands. If they continue to frame you as an unaccountable operator, you're going to lose the public's trust, and worse, the trust of your investors. Musk leaned forward, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to show them that this is about progress. About the future. Sarah nodded. The next few steps are crucial. We need to release a statement about our work with government agencies, something transparent. We need to control the optics, or the next round of leaks will bury us. Musk's mind raced as he considered the implications. The government had already suggested that his work with organizations like the CIA and NSA went far beyond what he had publicly admitted. While Musk was no stranger to controversy, this felt like a battle on a different scale. He wasn't just defending his companies anymore. He was fighting for something bigger, the future of humanity. All right, Musk said finally, a determined look in his eyes. Let's make the statement. But we're not just going to be defensive. We're going to talk about our goals for the future. We're going to talk about SpaceX's mission to make humanity multiplanetary, about Tesla's efforts to combat climate change. We're going to make this about what's at stake. Not about what they're accusing me of. As the team scrambled to prepare the statement, Musk took a moment to think about the larger picture. He had always been a disruptor, challenging the norms of what was possible. He had turned SpaceX into the leading force in private space exploration, and Tesla had revolutionized the auto industry. But now, he was up against an entirely different opponent, one that didn't play by the same rules. The government, with its resources and its vast reach, was a formidable adversary. And Musk knew that winning the battle wouldn't be enough. He needed to make sure that the government, his government, understood that he wasn't just some rogue entrepreneur. He walked over to his desk and picked up the framed picture of his children. They were the reason he had pushed himself so hard, so far. They were the reason he believed in a better future. His mind wandered to the thought of a world where his children could live on Mars, free from the constraints of Earth's climate issues, free from the political strife that had been plaguing the world for generations. That was the future he was fighting for, and he wasn't going to let anyone take it away from him. Musk sat back down at the table, feeling the weight of his responsibilities. "We'll take it to the public tomorrow," he said. "And I want to make sure we have a press tour lined up. I'm going to address the leaks directly. We're not hiding. We're going to face this head-on." The next day, the statement was released. In it, Musk addressed the public directly, acknowledging his work with government agencies but stressing that his goals had always been centered around advancing human progress. He spoke about the importance of space exploration, of sustainable energy, and of pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The statement was clear, concise, and unapologetic. It framed the issue as a matter of national and global importance, something that required bold action and innovation, not political maneuvering. As the media began to pick up the story, the response was mixed. Some outlets praised Musk for his transparency, while others seized upon the government's investigation as proof that Musk was too powerful, too unpredictable. They painted him as a visionary, yes, but also as a man whose ambitions were beginning to outpace his accountability. Still, Musk didn't let the criticism deter him. This was only the beginning. He knew that the public's perception could shift quickly, and he wasn't going to let that happen. He took to the airwaves the following week, appearing on high-profile talk shows and news segments to further explain his vision. The interviews were intense. The questions were pointed. The public wanted to know how far Musk would go to push his agenda, and whether he was willing to risk everything for the future he believed in. Musk answered each question with the same resolute confidence that had built his empire. But no matter how much he talked about his plans, the government's investigation loomed over him like a dark cloud. Every move he made was scrutinized. Every decision was weighed against the growing public backlash. And the more the government pushed, the more Musk realized that this wasn't just a fight for his companies, it was a fight for his freedom. As the weeks wore on, the tension escalated. The investigation into Musk's dealings with the government deepened, and the media continued to spin their own narratives. The question of Musk's true intentions, whether they were motivated by the greater good or a thirst for power, became the central theme of the public discourse. Behind closed doors, Musk and his team prepared for the worst. They knew that the government would stop at nothing to uncover every detail of his operations. But Musk wasn't going to back down. He was ready to face the full force of the establishment, no matter the cost. The stakes were high. And Musk knew that if he wanted to secure his legacy, if he wanted to prove that his vision for the future was worth fighting for, he had to keep pushing forward. The battle had only just begun. The political pressure was mounting. With each passing day, Musk felt the noose of government scrutiny tighten. It wasn't just about SpaceX or Tesla anymore, it was about a personal vendetta. His every move was dissected, his every word twisted to serve a narrative that painted him as an unpredictable force, a lone wolf whose ambitions threatened the very fabric of the establishment. But Musk wasn't one to back down. He had always been a man who thrived on challenges, and this one was no different. The investigation was no longer just a matter of financial oversight, it had turned into a full-scale probe into Musk's relationships with key government agencies. Leaked documents revealed that the government was attempting to establish a clear link between Musk's companies and sensitive national security projects. Whispers of espionage swirled, but Musk remained resolute, never losing sight of his vision. He had no time for distraction. He had a future to build. "Elon, the media is tearing us apart," Sarah said, her voice tired but unwavering. "They're focusing on everything but what's important, the work we're doing, the bigger picture." Musk ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing as he thought about the next steps. They had been playing defense for weeks now, responding to leaks, answering questions, and trying to steer the conversation back to the future he was building. But it was clear that wasn't enough. The government's campaign to discredit him was relentless, and with every new leak, the public's trust in him seemed to erode. "I know," Musk said, his tone sharp. "But we need to flip the narrative. If we continue to play by their rules, they win. It's time to make them play by ours." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking what I think you're thinking." Musk nodded. "It's time for transparency. We release everything. We show the public exactly what we're working on. Every detail. No secrets. If they want to accuse us of something, let them. But I want the world to see the truth." Musk's decision to take a bold, transparent approach sent shockwaves through his team. Releasing everything, every detail about his company's operations, their dealings with government agencies, and even personal information about his private life, was an unprecedented move. But Musk knew that the public was hungry for the truth. And if the government was going to accuse him of things he hadn't done, then it was time to take the power back. The following week, Musk and his legal team unveiled a comprehensive dossier. It was a complete record of all SpaceX and Tesla's interactions with the federal government, including contracts, communication, and research collaborations. They even made public the internal discussions within the companies regarding their dealings with agencies like NASA, the NSA, and the CIA. The documents were detailed, exhaustive, and completely transparent. Musk didn't hold anything back. The response was immediate. Some outlets hailed Musk as a hero, a man of principle who refused to be silenced by those who feared change. Others, however, seized upon the release, accusing Musk of attempting to muddy the waters. They argued that his decision to expose everything was a calculated move to deflect attention from the ongoing investigation. But Musk knew what he had done. By releasing everything, he had not only taken control of the narrative, but he had also forced the government to confront the reality of what was happening. The public now knew exactly what he was working on, and in doing so, he had painted a picture of a visionary striving to push humanity forward. "I don't care what they say," Musk muttered to himself as he watched the news coverage. "The truth is out there. They can't take that away." But while Musk focused on his public relations strategy, the investigation into his operations continued to intensify. Behind the scenes, the government was pressuring key figures within Musk's companies to testify, hoping to uncover something they could use to dismantle his empire. There were whispers of subpoenas, rumors of imminent legal action. The heat was turning up, and Musk knew that the stakes were higher than ever. His phone rang. It was a familiar number, one he hadn't expected to hear from. "Elon," the voice on the other end said. It was a government official, one of the people Musk had worked with on past projects. "I've been following the developments closely. The situation is escalating, and I need to be honest with you. You're in serious danger of losing everything." Musk's pulse quickened. He had expected the pressure to increase, but hearing it so bluntly from someone inside the system gave the situation a new gravity. "I'm aware," Musk replied, his voice calm despite the anxiety building inside him. "But I'm not backing down. There was a pause on the other end of the line before the official spoke again. Listen, you've made your mark. You've created something incredible. But the people coming after you, they won't stop. They're coming for more than just your companies. They want to break you. And they'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. Musk stood up, his gaze drifting to the window. Outside, the city was alive with activity, but in his mind, the battle raged on. The official's words echoed in his head, they want to break you. It was a chilling thought. But Musk had never been one to be intimidated. He had faced down impossible odds before, and he would do it again. This time, though, the stakes were personal. Then I'll fight back, Musk said, his voice unwavering. And when I do, I'm going to make sure they know exactly what they're up against. Later that evening, as Musk sat alone in his office, he reflected on the conversation. It was clear that the government was going to throw everything it had at him. They would stop at nothing to make sure he was discredited, to make sure his vision didn't come to fruition. But Musk wasn't afraid of a fight. He had always believed that the future was worth the struggle. He had always believed that humanity's potential was limitless, and he wasn't about to let a few powerful people stand in the way of progress. The next phase of his strategy was clear. He had taken the first step in revealing the truth, but now it was time to take the fight directly to those in power. If the government wanted to destroy him, they would have to face the consequences of their actions. Musk wasn't just fighting for his companies, he was fighting for the future of humanity. And he would not back down. I'll show them what it means to underestimate me, Musk muttered under his breath, a determined smile forming on his face. The fight was far from over. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As the investigation deepened, the tension between Musk and the government reached a boiling point. Musk knew that to truly take control of this situation, he would need to employ a strategy far beyond the transparency he had already laid out. This battle wasn't just about defending his companies, it was about ensuring that his larger vision for the future wasn't crushed by the political forces closing in on him. His mission was too important to fail. In the days following his release of the government documents, the media frenzy was relentless. Musk's bold move to expose everything had sent shockwaves through both the public and the government. But there was a dangerous undercurrent to all of this. While some celebrated Musk for his transparency, others, especially those who stood to lose power in the status quo, were starting to push back. The following Monday, as Musk sat in his office overlooking the sprawling Tesla factory, his legal team assembled in a conference room, preparing for the next phase of the fight. He knew that every move he made from here on out would have to be calculated. The government wasn't just interested in questioning his companies, they were determined to unravel everything he had built. Elon, Sarah said, entering the room with a stack of legal papers in hand. We've just received word that several key figures from NASA and the Department of Defense have been subpoenaed to testify about your dealings with them. Musk leaned back in his chair, a sigh escaping his lips. I knew it was coming. They won't stop until they've torn everything down. But we're not going to give them the satisfaction. The team gathered around the table, their faces serious. Musk could feel the weight of their gazes on him, as though they were all waiting for him to make the next big decision. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. I think it's time we play their game, Musk said, his voice firm. We need to strike first, before they can hit us with anything else. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You're talking about what I think you're talking about. Musk's eyes glinted with determination. Yes. A counteroffensive. We need to release even more information, everything we've been working on with the government. But we need to do it in a way that makes them uncomfortable. We need to show them that they're not the only ones with power. Are you suggesting a public reveal? One of his senior advisors asked cautiously. You want to escalate things? Musk nodded. Exactly. We've played the defensive game long enough. Now it's time to show them exactly how far we've come, and how much we've been involved in shaping the future. We need to take the spotlight away from the investigation and put it squarely on the progress we've made. The next few days were a blur of intense meetings and late-night strategizing. Musk's team meticulously gathered every scrap of information that could turn the tables in their favor. They began compiling a series of high-profile projects, many of which were still under wraps, that would paint Musk's vision in a completely new light. These weren't just government contracts or classified research. These were groundbreaking initiatives that had the potential to change the course of history. It was risky, but Musk knew that sometimes you had to go all in. The government's narrative about him being a rogue operator was taking hold, and if he didn't act soon, it would be too late to turn things around. The public needed to see the bigger picture, the one that Musk had always been striving toward. The reveal was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Musk took to social media, posting a brief but powerful message: "The truth is more complex than you think. It's time to show you what we've been building." Along with the message, he included a link to a live-streamed press conference where he would disclose the full scope of his work with the government. As the press conference began, Musk stood at the podium, looking calm but resolute. The world was watching, every news outlet, every government official, every skeptic who had doubted him. And he was ready to make his move. "We've been working on some of the most advanced technologies of the 21st century. And yes, we've done so with the support of government agencies. But what the public doesn't know is the true impact of these collaborations. We've been developing energy solutions that could reshape the global economy, we've been creating systems that could help us colonize Mars, and we've been laying the groundwork for the next phase of human evolution, one that goes beyond Earth." Musk's words were deliberate, each one designed to shock the audience. The live stream was flooded with comments and reactions, as millions of people around the world listened intently. As the camera zoomed in on his face, Musk continued. "We've been in contact with the CIA, NASA, and the Department of Defense for more than a decade, collaborating on projects that are aimed at solving the world's most pressing issues, issues that are bigger than any one company, any one person. The reality is, the future of humanity depends on the work we're doing. It's not about power or profit, it's about ensuring that we don't just survive as a species, but that we thrive." The room was silent for a moment as Musk's words sank in. Then came the storm of reactions. Some called it the most audacious move Musk had ever made. Others, however, were quick to criticize him for being too brash, for challenging the very institutions that had kept him afloat. But Musk was undeterred. He knew that this was a turning point. The pressure from the government was no longer just an annoyance, it was a full-scale assault on his legacy. And Musk wasn't going to let that happen. The fallout from the press conference was immediate. News outlets across the globe picked up the story, running headlines like "Elon Musk's bold reveal," "The government's hidden partner," and "Musk and the future of human civilization, what the government didn't want you to know." At the same time, whispers of government retaliation began to spread. Sources within the Pentagon hinted at a larger effort to dismantle Musk's empire, using everything from legal action to covert tactics. Musk knew that the war had only just begun. He had struck a blow, but the government wasn't going to give up without a fight. Still, Musk had one undeniable advantage: the public. People were beginning to understand the true scope of what he was working toward. They saw his transparency, his willingness to expose the inner workings of his operations, and they respected him for it. Musk had once again shifted the narrative in his favor, and the government would have to respond, one way or another. The world seemed to hold its breath. The press conference had caused a seismic shift in the public narrative, but the backlash was swift and intense. While millions praised Elon Musk's openness, the government and various political figures were starting to push back. The stakes had risen significantly. Musk knew that this was far from over, he had just entered the most dangerous phase of the battle. The immediate aftermath was a flurry of legal threats, leaked memos, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. The administration had made it clear that they wouldn't allow Musk to disrupt their carefully crafted narrative. In Washington, the power brokers were moving quickly to put pressure on anyone who had worked with Musk, pushing them to testify or, in some cases, to cut ties with the billionaire entrepreneur. One morning, as Musk sat at his desk in the SpaceX headquarters, his phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Elon, you need to see this," she said, her voice filled with concern. He clicked the link she had sent, and his heart skipped a beat. It was an op-ed published in one of the major newspapers, and the headline was a direct attack on him, "Elon Musk's dangerous game, the government's hidden puppeteer." Musk leaned back in his chair, the weight of the article settling in. It was everything he had feared, a complete distortion of the truth. The piece accused him of manipulating government agencies for his own gain, suggesting that his ties to national security agencies weren't about innovation, but about consolidating power for a dangerous future. The accusations were unfounded, but the implications were damaging. "He's not just a tech mogul anymore, Elon," Sarah said, cutting through his thoughts. "They're painting you as a national security threat. This is no longer just about SpaceX or Tesla. They're going after you personally." Musk rubbed his eyes, taking a deep breath. "I know. But they won't silence me. Not this time." He stood up and walked over to the window, staring out at the massive rocket assembly bay. His vision for the future was bigger than any personal attack. Mars was still out there, the stars were still within reach, and the fight for humanity's survival was far more important than any temporary setback. But Musk knew the real battle had just begun. In the days that followed, Musk's legal team worked tirelessly to fend off subpoenas, lawsuits, and the relentless barrage of media scrutiny. Despite their best efforts, it became clear that Musk was being systematically targeted by powerful forces within the government. It wasn't just the media. Key figures from Musk's past were suddenly coming forward with concerns about his business dealings and personal motivations. The strategy was clear: discredit him, one piece at a time. They couldn't stop him outright, but they could undermine his credibility, one story at a time. Musk needed to fight back, but he also knew he couldn't fight every battle at once. The public was watching his every move, and one wrong step could spell disaster. His focus remained on the bigger picture: he had to keep moving forward. He couldn't let the forces aligned against him dictate his pace. "Let's focus on what we can control," Musk said, addressing his team during an urgent meeting. "We keep building. We keep launching. The more we show what we're capable of, the less they can attack us on. We're not going to win this by playing defense." Sarah nodded, her expression a mix of determination and exhaustion. "You're right, Elon. The government might want to stall us, but we're not going to stop. We've got bigger things to do." As Musk pushed ahead with his plans, something unexpected began to happen. The more the government tried to discredit him, the more the public rallied behind him. People began to see Musk's transparency not as an act of desperation, but as a bold, principled stand against a system that didn't understand the significance of his work. Musk had always been a polarizing figure. Some saw him as a visionary, a genius who was reshaping the future of humanity. Others, however, viewed him as a reckless billionaire who cared more about his ego than the people he affected. But the more the attacks from the government mounted, the more the public seemed to rally behind him. In a strange turn of events, Musk found himself gaining allies in unexpected places. Certain political figures, known for their skepticism of corporate power, began to speak out in support of Musk's transparency in his vision. They weren't necessarily agreeing with everything he did, but they understood the importance of his work, and they saw how the government's efforts to take him down might set a dangerous precedent for others in the tech industry. "There's something happening out there," Sarah said one evening, as they went over the latest polling data. "People are starting to see this for what it is, a battle for the future. It's not just about you anymore, Elon. It's about what happens to innovation, to progress, to all of us." Musk looked at the data, surprised by the growing support. "So they're not just attacking me. They're attacking what we represent. They're attacking progress. That's exactly it, Sarah said. And that's why they won't stop. They'll keep coming after us because they know that if we succeed, it will change everything. They're not just worried about your companies, they're worried about what you could unlock. Despite the growing public support, the pressure continued to mount. Behind closed doors, the government was escalating its efforts. The legal battles intensified, with subpoenas being issued to more members of Musk's inner circle. The media attacks became more personal, with journalists digging into Musk's personal life, searching for any scandal that could discredit him. But Musk was prepared. The more they pushed, the more he dug in. He was in this for the long haul. There was no other option. One morning, as Musk arrived at his office, he received an urgent message from his lawyer. The government was preparing to announce a massive investigation into his financial dealings, something far more serious than anything they had attempted before. This time, they weren't just going after his companies, they were going after him personally. They want me to break, Musk muttered under his breath. But I'm not going to. I'll never break. He knew that the battle was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. And as the weight of the investigation bore down on him, he realized one thing: the road ahead would be the hardest yet. But Musk was no stranger to adversity. He had been fighting for the future of humanity since the beginning, and he wasn't about to stop now. The real fight was about to begin. Musk's strategy had been straightforward: keep pushing forward, keep innovating, and don't let the noise of the opposition drown out the larger vision. But as the government's investigation deepened, there were moments when even he had to question how far this could go before it all came crashing down. With the new wave of personal attacks flooding the media and the legal team working overtime to manage subpoenas, Musk found himself facing the stark reality that no matter how successful his companies became, the government's reach was far more powerful than anyone realized. Even the brightest minds in the legal world were beginning to question if they could hold off the weight of the federal government, given their relentless pursuit. One evening, as Musk walked into his office at Tesla, his eyes immediately went to the large window overlooking the manufacturing floor. The hum of production continued below, but it was clear his mind wasn't focused on the innovations coming to life around him. He stared out, his mind swirling with thoughts of what the future might hold. His phone buzzed again. Another update from his lawyer, another legal battle looming. This time, the government wasn't just targeting him, they were targeting his companies as well, claiming that his dealings with certain foreign entities had crossed ethical lines. The accusations were vague, but the message was clear: they were trying to discredit him at every turn. Musk exhaled sharply. The weight of the situation was starting to feel crushing. "They don't want us to succeed, Sarah," he said as he picked up the phone and called his trusted advisor. Sarah's voice came through. "I know, Elon. They're coming after everything, but we're not going to back down." He paced around his office, his thoughts running wild. "I've been through challenges before, Sarah. Hell, I built a company from nothing and shot rockets into space. But this feels different." "The world is watching you, Elon," Sarah reminded him. "And we've got something that no one else does, the truth." Musk paused, his breath steadying. "You're right. I've always said the truth is the most powerful weapon. But now we've got to use it wisely." The following days were a blur of meetings, legal consultations, and strategic sessions. Musk's legal team was preparing for the impending storm: more subpoenas, more attacks, and the looming possibility that the government would attempt to shut down one of his companies. "We can't let them gain any ground," Sarah said one afternoon as she and Musk reviewed the latest developments. "The public needs to see that you're not the enemy here. They need to see that we're fighting for progress." Musk nodded, his mind already at work on the next move. "I need to give the people something more than just the truth, Sarah. I need to show them what's at stake. I need to put all the pieces together. If we don't, we risk losing them forever." It wasn't just a question of legal tactics or financial backing anymore. It had become a battle for the hearts and minds of the public. As Musk's legal troubles mounted, the once favorable media coverage was now becoming more skeptical, questioning his motives, his dealings, and his integrity. Musk was no stranger to adversity. He had faced backlash before, from his critics who called his ambitions outlandish to the naysayers who doubted his ability to achieve the seemingly impossible. But this was different. The stakes were higher, and his enemies, both within and outside the government, were relentless. But Musk was resolute. "We're going to play their game. But we're going to do it on our terms," he declared, his eyes narrowing as a plan began to form in his mind. As Musk's legal battles raged on, he decided to shift the narrative once again, this time making the strategic move to collaborate publicly with influential figures from around the world, individuals who shared his vision for the future and who could help amplify his voice. It wasn't just about building rockets or electric cars anymore. Musk was staking his claim as a leader of the next generation of humanity, the person who could bring society to a place where the impossible was made possible. And to do that, he would need to build alliances, not just with other business leaders, but with those in positions of power who understood the importance of his work. One of the people Musk reached out to was an influential senator from California, who had long supported green energy initiatives and cutting-edge technology. Her name was Senator Emily Carter, and her political influence could be a game-changer in turning the tide of public opinion in Musk's favor. "Senator Carter, it's Elon Musk," he said during a private call with her. "I've been following your work, and I believe we have a shared goal of creating a future that's sustainable and innovative." Carter listened attentively, sensing the urgency in Musk's voice. "I'm aware of what you're going through right now, Elon. And I know this fight isn't just about you. It's about all of us." Musk's eyes lit up with hope. "Exactly. We can't afford to let this investigation derail everything we've worked for. If we stand together, we can show the public what's really at stake. It's not just about a single company or a single person, it's about the future of this planet." Senator Carter agreed to meet with Musk in person, and within days, they were sitting across from each other at a conference table, discussing their shared vision for the future. That evening, the media buzzed with anticipation as Musk and Senator Carter made a joint announcement. They revealed that they were launching a new initiative aimed at bringing together the world's brightest minds to focus on solving the most pressing global challenges: energy, space exploration, and climate change. The announcement was met with mixed reactions. Some praised Musk for his boldness in aligning himself with a powerful political figure, while others questioned the timing of such a move, given the ongoing government investigation. Still, Musk remained undeterred. "I'm not trying to fight this battle alone," he said during the press conference. "We need to be united, not just as businesses or politicians, but as people who are committed to making the world a better place." For the first time in weeks, Musk allowed himself a moment of optimism. He was no longer just a tech mogul fighting a government conspiracy. He was leading a movement that transcended business and politics. And despite the challenges ahead, he knew that he had the power to change the world. Musk's decision to align with Senator Carter was a bold one, but it was necessary. His fight was no longer just about pushing technology forward, it was about navigating a political and legal labyrinth that seemed designed to stifle him at every turn. But the alliance was more than just strategic, it signaled that Musk was building a coalition, one that would make it harder for his critics to dismiss him as a lone eccentric billionaire. For days after the press conference, the media landscape buzzed with reactions. Some pundits praised the alliance, seeing it as a new, powerful force in the political and technological world. Others, however, mocked it as a desperate move by a man cornered by legal troubles. "The senator is just the latest pawn in Musk's quest for total dominance," one editorial piece sneered. "Now he's aligning himself with Washington power brokers to deflect attention from his mounting scandals." But Musk had learned long ago that the media would say whatever they wanted. If he focused on trying to control the narrative, he'd only end up exhausted and ineffective. What mattered now was what he could build, not what people said about him. "I can't let this faze me," Musk told Sarah during one of their late-night calls. "I know what I'm building, and I know why I'm building it. This is bigger than any news cycle. If we keep our eyes on the horizon, we'll win this." Sarah's voice, steady and calm, offered him the reassurance he needed. "You're right. Focus on the mission. Let the noise fade away." The following week, Musk sat down with his closest team of advisors to discuss the next phase of the plan. It was time to pivot. They were no longer just defending against the investigation. Now, they had to ensure that the public understood that Musk wasn't a threat to national security, but a vital force for global progress. "We're going to need a campaign," Musk said, addressing his team. "Something that rallies the public around the idea that innovation, if done right, can be a force for good. That it can transform lives, not just for the wealthy, but for everyone." His head of communications, Jack, looked up from his notes. "We're already seeing some grassroots support from the tech community, especially from the younger crowd. They believe in what you stand for, but we need to reach people outside of that demographic. Middle America. The working-class folks who don't always see the connection between electric cars and a better future." Musk rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Exactly. We need to humanize this. It's not about rockets or electric vehicles. It's about jobs, clean energy, and giving people a future worth believing in." The meeting continued well into the night as they brainstormed ideas, considering everything from public rallies to social media campaigns that would highlight the personal stories of those whose lives had been changed by Musk's companies. "The narrative needs to be about people," Musk said. "Not just technology. We're creating a better world for all of us. Let's tell that story." Meanwhile, in Washington, the heat was intensifying. The investigation into Musk's companies was reaching new heights. The media was digging into his past, unearthing long-forgotten interviews and archived footage, all designed to paint him as a man out of touch with the realities of the world. Yet Musk was still pressing forward. His message was clear: if the world wasn't ready for the future, it would have to catch up. Senator Carter, despite her initial support, had started to feel the pressure. Her political opponents began to question her association with Musk, accusing her of turning a blind eye to his questionable business practices. One afternoon, she called Musk to express her concerns. "Elon, the backlash is getting louder. Some of my colleagues are starting to pull away. I think we need to be more strategic about how we approach this. Maybe we should ease back for a while, let the heat die down." Musk didn't hesitate. "We don't back down. If we ease up now, we'll lose everything. We need to lean in, go harder. The future won't wait for us to figure out our strategy, it's coming, and we have to lead it." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "I know, Elon," Carter said quietly. "But I'm starting to wonder if the world is ready for this kind of disruption." Musk's voice grew firm. "The world may not be ready, but it will be. I'm not here to play it safe. I'm here to make history. And I need you to help me do that." Carter was silent for a moment, then finally spoke. "All right. Let's do it. We'll stay the course." Days later, Musk's team launched their new campaign, a multimedia blitz aimed at humanizing his companies. It wasn't just about showcasing products, it was about showing the world how his innovations were changing lives. The campaign featured real stories from people who had benefited from Tesla's electric cars, SpaceX's reusable rockets, and Starlink's satellite internet service. It was a direct assault on the narrative being pushed by the media and political opponents. To further emphasize his commitment to the people, Musk began to tour cities across the United States, visiting communities that had benefited from his companies. From farmers now able to access affordable, clean energy to factory workers who had transitioned into new roles at Tesla's gigafactories, the message was clear: Musk wasn't a villain. He was a catalyst for progress. The public response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life began to see Musk not just as a businessman, but as someone who was fighting for a better world. His personal story, filled with ups and downs, became a symbol of resilience. The more he embraced the narrative of building for the future, the more his critics seemed to fade into the background. But even as Musk gained more public support, the storm was far from over. The government wasn't about to let up. Their investigation continued, and the pressure mounted on every front. And yet, Musk was beginning to sense that something larger was at play, something that was driving the opposition beyond just the typical political or business rivalry. He knew it wasn't just about him. This was about the future, and the forces trying to hold that future back were more powerful than he had imagined. The quiet before the storm had ended. Now, it was time for the real fight to begin. Musk could feel the tension in the air, almost as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. The growing support from the public was a double-edged sword. While it reinforced his resolve, it also amplified the opposition. The government's investigation was no longer just about paperwork or legal battles. It was starting to feel like a personal vendetta. His critics were becoming more brazen, more public in their attacks, as if the walls were closing in on him from all sides. But Musk wasn't the type to retreat, even in the face of overwhelming pressure. He had never been one to play by the rules, and he wasn't about to start now. This was his moment, and he was ready to fight, not just for himself, but for the future he believed in. "You can't let them break you, Elon," Sarah said one evening, as the two of them sat across from each other at a private dinner. "They're trying to weaken you, to take away everything you've built. But we both know that you're stronger than they think." Musk stared at his plate, his thoughts swirling. "I don't think it's about me anymore, Sarah. It's about the whole system. The powers that be don't want to see anyone change the world, not like this. Not on my terms." Sarah leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "Then you have to show them why it's worth it. Why all of this matters." He nodded slowly, her words sinking in. The fight wasn't just about defending himself, it was about proving to the world that the kind of change he was pushing for was necessary. The world needed to see that innovation wasn't a threat, but a tool for progress. Over the next few days, Musk threw himself into his work with a renewed sense of purpose. His teams at Tesla and SpaceX were working tirelessly on new projects, and the public campaign continued to gain momentum. Still, no matter how much he achieved, the looming threat of the government's investigation never left his mind. It was one morning, while Musk was reviewing some of the latest designs for the next-generation Tesla model, that he received a call that would change everything. "Mr. Musk," said the voice on the other end of the line. "We need to talk. It's about the investigation." Musk's heart skipped a beat. He knew this wasn't going to be good news. "Go ahead," he said, bracing himself. "We've just received word that the government is preparing to issue a massive subpoena against your companies. They're targeting not just Tesla and SpaceX, but every single one of your ventures. They believe that your companies are engaged in illegal activities, and they plan to make an example out of you." Musk's hand clenched around the phone. "Is there anything we can do to stop this?" "We're working on it, but the reality is, they're coming for you. This is bigger than just a legal issue, it's a full-scale attack." Musk could hear the gravity in the voice of his lawyer. "I knew this was coming," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "But we're not backing down. We can't. The world needs to see what's at stake." The line went quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight," Musk said, his voice cold with determination. "And I'm going to make sure they understand what they're really up against." The news broke later that day, and within hours, the media was abuzz. The government had officially launched a full-scale investigation into Musk's companies, citing multiple claims of illegal activities, including unethical business practices, international espionage, and violations of government regulations. As expected, the media painted Musk as a villain, an egotistical billionaire who had used his influence to bypass laws and manipulate the system for his own gain. But Musk wasn't concerned with the headlines. He had bigger plans. The next day, Musk held a press conference, his demeanor calm but unwavering. The room was packed with reporters, each eager to ask questions about the scandal. As he stepped to the podium, Musk scanned the crowd, his eyes sharp and focused. "I'm not here to defend myself," he began, his voice steady. "I'm here to defend the future. The truth is, the world doesn't want innovation. They don't want change. They want the status quo." A murmur ran through the room as Musk continued. "They want to keep things the way they've always been, because it's comfortable. It's predictable. But I'm not in the business of comfort. I'm in the business of creating something that will change the world. And that's exactly what I'm going to do." He paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink in. "The government can attack me all they want," he said, his voice rising. "But they can't stop progress. They can't stop the future. And no matter what happens, I will keep fighting. Not just for myself, but for everyone who believes that innovation can make the world a better place." The room was silent. Musk had just fired the opening salvo in what was sure to be a long, drawn-out battle. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also knew that he had no choice. If he wanted to continue his mission, he would have to prove to the world, and to the government, that his vision for the future was worth fighting for. Back at his office, Musk felt a sense of quiet resolve wash over him. He wasn't just fighting for his companies anymore. This was bigger than that. He was fighting for the future of humanity. But even as the world seemed to rally behind him, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that the government was only just getting started. They had declared war on him, and now he had to prepare for the storm that was coming. He had no idea what was coming next, but he knew one thing for sure: it wasn't going to be easy. And it was only going to get harder from here. But Musk had never been one to back down from a challenge. He would face whatever came his way, head on, and continue to build the future, no matter the cost. The fallout from the government's sudden and aggressive investigation into Musk's companies was immediate and far-reaching. The media's coverage became more venomous, painting him as a symbol of unchecked power, a rogue billionaire who was manipulating the very systems meant to keep him in check. The public outcry was loud, but there was a clear split between those who saw Musk as a visionary hero and those who viewed him as a dangerous, power-hungry figure. For Musk, it was another day in the battlefield. But this time, the stakes were higher. The government had drawn its line in the sand, and Musk knew it wouldn't rest until it had a victory. The war had escalated from an investigation to something much more personal. The storm was brewing, and Musk felt the weight of it on his shoulders. Every night, the quiet hum of his Tesla Roadster in the driveway, the starry silence above, seemed to mock him. He was no longer fighting to create better cars or colonize Mars, he was fighting for the very freedom to build them at all. The government's investigation had escalated, and the news surrounding it was getting uglier by the day. It wasn't just the media spin anymore, it was the serious threat of criminal charges, the destruction of everything he had built. But as always, Musk refused to let fear control him. Fear would keep him in the past, and Musk wasn't interested in the past. He was here to shape the future. In the days that followed his press conference, Musk's every move was scrutinized. Yet the more they attacked, the more his resolve solidified. He wasn't going to back down. If they wanted a fight, he would give them one they wouldn't forget. The government wasn't just targeting his companies, they were now after everything Musk had ever touched. They were digging into his personal life, his financial dealings, and his interactions with other major players in the business world. His team of lawyers was working around the clock, trying to keep the investigation from spiraling into something far more serious. One morning, Musk found himself pacing in his private office, his phone buzzing non-stop. The latest round of allegations had just dropped, and this time, they were claiming that Musk's companies were involved in secretive deals with foreign governments. The media was all over it, spreading rumors that he had been funneling technology to rival nations in exchange for political favors. As Musk scrolled through the headlines, his frustration grew. It wasn't the first time they had tried to paint him as the villain, but this was different. The allegations were specific, calculated, and designed to turn the public against him. This wasn't just an attack on his business, it was an attempt to destroy his reputation, to make him untouchable. He knew what was at stake. His companies, his ideas, everything he had worked for could crumble under the weight of these false accusations. The stakes had never been higher. His phone rang again. It was Sarah. "Hey, how's it going?" she asked, her voice sounding concerned. Musk let out a deep sigh. "They're coming at us from all angles, Sarah. This latest round is bad. They're claiming SpaceX is handing over military-grade tech to foreign governments. The press is eating it up. If this keeps up, they'll tear down everything we've built." Sarah's voice was steady but full of empathy. "You know this isn't true. You've always been open about your mission to make life better for humanity, not to play politics. But they're twisting it. We just need to stay focused. Keep doing the work." "I know," Musk muttered. "But the longer they drag this out, the harder it's going to get to push forward. If they manage to destroy my credibility, everything we're working on could be in jeopardy. We might lose the public's trust." She paused for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was unwavering. "I know you, Elon. You're not the kind of person who's going to let this defeat you. You'll find a way through. You always do." Over the next few weeks, the pressure mounted. Public appearances became more difficult, as every word Musk spoke was dissected, analyzed, and distorted by the media. It seemed like every new press release, every new piece of evidence released by the government, added more fuel to the fire. He had become the face of a battle between two competing forces, those who believed in innovation and progress, and those who were determined to hold on to the status quo. Through it all, Musk continued to work tirelessly, pushing his companies to innovate at the same breakneck pace he always had. SpaceX launched another successful mission, Tesla announced a new round of advanced battery technology, and his other ventures continued to move forward. But the weight of the public scrutiny was taking its toll. Musk had always been a workaholic, driven by the need to create, but now his long hours were beginning to affect him. His sleep was patchy, his mind constantly racing. He began to lose track of time, consumed by the constant barrage of legal battles and media attacks. The physical and emotional exhaustion was starting to show. One late evening, after a particularly grueling board meeting, Musk found himself alone in his office. The city lights twinkled outside, but the silence in the room felt suffocating. He stared at the glow of his computer screen, the same legal documents he had been reviewing all day. A small part of him wanted to just walk away from it all, take a break, clear his head, maybe even give up. But then he thought about all the people who were relying on him, the employees at his companies, the communities benefiting from his innovations, the millions of people who believed in his vision for the future. He couldn't stop now. That night, Musk called Sarah again. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," he admitted, the exhaustion in his voice clear. "It feels like the whole world is against me." Sarah's voice softened. "You're not alone, Elon. We're all here, fighting with you. You've already done so much. Don't let them take that away from you." Her words gave him a moment of clarity. Musk realized that he had been carrying the weight of this fight on his own shoulders for too long. He wasn't alone. He had a team, a family, and a vision that was bigger than any challenge the world could throw at him. The next day, Musk announced a bold new initiative, a global campaign to promote technological transparency and accountability. The goal was simple, to show the world that innovation could be a force for good, and that companies like Tesla and SpaceX were committed to transparency, ethical practices, and a future focused on sustainability and progress. Musk knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but he was done fighting in the shadows. It was time to take the fight to the world, to show them what he stood for, and to challenge the narrative the government had been building around him. He wasn't going to let them control the conversation anymore. The campaign launched with a live-streamed event, where Musk shared the inner workings of his companies, revealed the efforts they had taken to ensure ethical and sustainable practices, and committed to further transparency. The event was broadcasted worldwide, and the response was electric. People from around the globe rallied behind Musk, offering their support and showing that they believed in his vision. For the first time in weeks, Musk felt a glimmer of hope. He knew the battle wasn't over. The government still had its sights set on him, and the media was relentless. But for the first time in a long time, he had taken the fight back into his own hands. And with the public standing behind him, Musk realized that the true power of innovation didn't lie in technology alone, it lay in the people who believed in it. They were the ones who would carry the torch forward, no matter how many times the world tried to snuff it out. That night, as Musk finally allowed himself a few hours of rest, he knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be harder than anything he had faced before. But with his vision intact, his supporters by his side, and the future calling, Musk was more determined than ever to win this fight. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for the future. And he would not stop. As the campaign Musk had launched began to gather momentum, the fight for public support became more critical than ever. He knew that, no matter how much he tried to control the narrative, the real battle was with the forces behind the scenes, those pulling the strings, deciding who had the right to innovate and who would be kept in line. It was one evening, while Musk was poring over financial documents, that he received a call that shifted everything. His eyes narrowed as he heard the voice on the other end. "Elon, you need to be careful. Things are moving in ways you don't understand," the voice warned. It was John, one of his closest allies, a former high-ranking government official who had switched sides after he realized how far-reaching the corruption in the system went. "John, what are you talking about?" Musk replied, trying to stay calm, but sensing the urgency in the tone. "They're not just after you, they're coming after anyone who dares to stand up to them. I've seen the plans, Elon. There are people in the highest positions, both in government and in corporate America, who want to make sure that you fail. They can't allow your kind of disruption to succeed." Musk's heart pounded, but he kept his composure. "What are they planning, John? How far are they willing to go? The investigation you're facing right now? It's just the beginning. They're mobilizing more powerful allies behind closed doors, people who can make your life a living hell. And they won't stop until they've destroyed everything you've worked for." Musk stood up, his fingers gripping the edges of his desk. "I knew this wasn't just about me. But this is bigger than I thought. I'm telling you, they won't stop unless you fight back, Elon. You've got to take them head on. Do whatever it takes." The line went dead with a click, and Musk was left alone in his office, the weight of the revelation crashing down on him. This wasn't just about a legal battle anymore. There were unseen forces out there, powerful people who would do anything to protect the system they had built. Musk knew the stakes had just reached a whole new level. In the days that followed, Musk made plans to dig deeper. He knew that the key to winning this battle lay not just in defending himself, but in exposing the truth that those in power were manipulating the system to protect their interests at all costs. He wasn't just going to fight the investigation, he was going to turn the tables. He called in his trusted team of advisors, including Sarah, who had been his rock throughout this journey. They sat around a table in his private conference room, their faces grim as Musk outlined his plan. "We need to expose the corruption within the system," Musk said, his voice steady, but the fire in his eyes unmistakable. "We can't just defend ourselves anymore. We need to go on the offensive. We're going to gather evidence, find out who's behind this attack, and make sure the world sees it." Sarah nodded. "You're not just up against the government. You're up against an entire network of corporate and political forces. It won't be easy, but I know you've got the determination to see it through." Musk turned his attention to the digital screen in front of him, where encrypted documents filled the screen. His cybersecurity team had been working around the clock to gather any and all data that could expose the hidden players pulling the strings behind his legal troubles. Musk had always been ahead of the curve when it came to technology. He knew that this battle was just as much about information warfare as it was about legal strategy. But the deeper Musk delved into the investigation, the more he realized how complicated the system really was. The web of connections stretched far beyond what he had anticipated: corporations, foreign governments, and even shadowy organizations that seemed to operate just outside the realm of public knowledge. His team unearthed evidence that hinted at a coordinated effort to target him, not just for his business practices but for his role as a disruptive force in the tech industry. The government wasn't just trying to take him down, they were trying to send a message to anyone who would dare challenge the established order. Musk wasn't the only one at risk. His entire vision for the future of technology and space exploration was under attack. One evening, as Musk sat in his private study, staring at the latest batch of documents, a realization hit him. This fight wasn't just about his companies or his reputation. It was about the future of innovation itself. The forces arrayed against him wanted to preserve the status quo, to keep the world locked in a cycle of mediocrity and stagnation. But Musk knew that the only way forward was through disruption, through challenging the very systems that had held humanity back for so long. As the hours passed and the weight of the information mounted, Musk felt a sudden surge of clarity. It was no longer just about defending himself. It was about exposing the system's corruption for all to see, about showing the world that true progress could never come from those who were more interested in protecting their power than in creating a better future. The next morning, Musk called Sarah into his office. He needed to act, and he needed to act fast. "It's time," he said, his voice calm but determined. "We're going public. We're going to expose the entire network behind this attack, and we're going to make sure everyone knows the truth." Sarah looked at him for a moment, understanding the gravity of what he was about to do. "You're sure about this? Once we release the information, there's no going back." Musk didn't hesitate. "It's the only way to win. We can't keep playing by their rules. We need to take control of the narrative, or they'll destroy everything we've worked for." And so, Musk and his team began to prepare for the most critical move of his career. They carefully crafted a series of revelations that would reveal the true scale of the conspiracy against him, the corporate giants, the political operatives, and the hidden forces that had tried to undermine his companies. The truth would come out, no matter what it cost. But as Musk prepared for the release of the information, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The forces behind the scenes were powerful, and they would stop at nothing to maintain their grip on power. But Musk had always thrived in the face of adversity. Now, more than ever, he was ready to fight back. The weeks following Musk's decision to go public were filled with a mix of anticipation and tension. He knew that once the floodgates were opened, there would be no turning back. The world was about to see everything: the corporate backdoor dealings, the political maneuvering, the shadowy alliances, and he was going to be the one to expose it all. Musk's office had transformed into a war room. The space was lined with documents, digital screens flashing encrypted files, and a growing list of names: CEOs, political figures, even military contractors. Every new revelation sent shockwaves through Musk's team, but it was all part of the plan. He had to be ready for the aftermath, no matter how unpredictable it might be. The first domino fell when Musk's cybersecurity team, working tirelessly to sift through mountains of data, uncovered a key document, a contract between one of Musk's competitors and a foreign government. The contract detailed not only the exchange of technology but also the involvement of high-ranking officials in multiple governments who were using backchannels to influence market outcomes. This was the smoking gun Musk had been waiting for, and it pointed directly at the heart of the conspiracy against him. The evidence was undeniable, and Musk knew he had to act quickly. This wasn't just about his companies anymore. This was about revealing the corruption and power dynamics that had kept the world's most powerful players in control for far too long. He gathered his closest advisors, Sarah, John, and a few trusted journalists who had been following his case, and prepared to make the most important announcement of his life. The day of the reveal arrived, and Musk stood in front of a camera, his eyes sharp with determination. The broadcast went live across every major news platform, streaming into millions of homes around the world. The pressure was palpable, but Musk's voice remained steady as he began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, for months, you have heard the story the media and government want you to believe. A story that paints me and my companies as rogue entities, acting outside the law. But today, I will show you the truth. The truth about who is really pulling the strings. Who has been manipulating the system for their own benefit. Who has been hiding in the shadows. The tension in the air was thick as Musk began to release the evidence one piece at a time. The first revelation was the most damning, documents detailing the contracts with foreign governments, proving that certain powerful players were orchestrating a coordinated effort to suppress the rise of Musk's companies. The contracts revealed a web of influence, corruption, and collusion, with one common thread: those who stood to lose the most from innovation were the very ones who had set this entire smear campaign in motion. Musk didn't stop there. He continued to expose more documents, each one revealing another layer of the conspiracy: secret meetings between political figures, corporate executives, and even military contractors, all working in tandem to control the flow of new technology and limit access to the public. As the last piece of evidence flashed on the screen, a leaked video of a secret meeting between high-ranking officials discussing how to take down Musk's companies, the world seemed to stop. The broadcast was met with stunned silence as the weight of the revelation sank in. The response from the public was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with hashtags like #ExposeTheSystem and #MuskIsRight, as people from all corners of the globe expressed their shock, outrage, and support for Musk. The hashtag quickly began trending worldwide, and soon, Musk found himself at the center of a movement that went beyond his companies or his personal reputation. This was about the system itself, a system that had long kept the power in the hands of a few. The media, once quick to criticize Musk, was now forced to reassess its position. Some outlets condemned the revelations as a desperate attempt by Musk to salvage his reputation, but the weight of the evidence was too much to ignore. For the first time in his career, Musk found himself being hailed as a hero, an underdog fighting against a corrupt system that had tried to silence him. Yet, with the newfound support came new dangers. The people Musk had exposed didn't take kindly to being outed, and they were far from finished. The real battle, Musk knew, was only just beginning. His allies in the government and corporate world might have been shaken, but they still had the resources and power to retaliate. The night after the reveal, Musk couldn't sleep. His mind raced with possibilities. What would happen next? Would the government come after him with even more force? Would the media turn on him once again? Or, perhaps, would the system find a way to silence the truth? As the clock ticked past midnight, his phone buzzed on the bedside table. He grabbed it, seeing a message from Sarah. "You did it. The truth is out. But stay sharp. They won't let you win this easily." Musk smiled wearily, acknowledging the truth in her words. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. The following days were a whirlwind. The government announced an emergency investigation into the claims Musk had made, and there were calls for immediate hearings in Congress. But Musk wasn't about to sit back and let the narrative slip from his control. He had already taken the first step by going public. Now, he would make sure the world knew the full extent of what was happening behind the scenes. But just as Musk began to feel a sense of control, a new challenge arose. In the middle of the global outcry, a mysterious hacker group, whose name was still unknown, released a video of Musk himself, edited and doctored to look as though he had been involved in illegal activities. The video was high quality, convincing enough to make people question Musk's motives. The timing couldn't have been worse. As the hacker's video gained traction online, Musk supporters began to waver. The whispers of doubt began to spread, and the media picked up on the story, spinning it as an attempt by Musk to hide his own misdeeds. His credibility was once again at risk. But Musk wasn't ready to back down. The truth had already been revealed, and he wasn't going to let a fake video derail everything he had fought for. The hackers might have thought they were going to break him, but Musk had learned the value of fighting back against the odds. It was time to bring the real fight to the people who had orchestrated the attack on him. He wasn't just going to take down the conspiracy against him. He was going to take down the system that had allowed such corruption to thrive. With renewed determination, Musk gathered his team and prepared for the next phase of his fight. The next battle would be his most daring yet, and this time, the stakes were even higher. The fight for the future had only just begun. As the world watched, the spotlight on Elon Musk grew even more intense. The recent scandal, the government hearings, and the release of the doctored video had shaken Musk to his core. His every move was under scrutiny, and the stakes had never been higher. People who had once supported him now questioned his motives, while those who had always opposed him seized the opportunity to fan the flames of doubt. But Musk was no stranger to adversity. The power of his resolve was stronger than ever. He understood that every great disruption came with a price. He had made his name by challenging the status quo, by taking risks no one else was willing to take, and now, more than ever, he had to rely on that same courage. With a heavy heart, Musk walked into a private meeting room at SpaceX headquarters. His trusted advisors were already there, Sarah, John, and a few key team members. They had been strategizing over the past few days, trying to determine the best course of action. Elon, we've been over this 1,000 times. The media is turning against you. The narrative is getting harder to control. We need to get ahead of it before it spirals, Sarah said, her face tense with concern. Musk, however, wasn't in the mood for caution. No. We don't control the narrative by playing it safe. We expose the full truth, all of it. We give them everything, every document, every recording. No more half measures. The world will know exactly who they're dealing with. John raised an eyebrow. You're talking about going all in, Elon. Exposing everything might just drive them into a corner, but it could also make you a target in ways we can't predict. If they see us as a threat, they might try to do more than just destroy your businesses. They might try to destroy you. Musk leaned forward, his voice quiet but determined. If they want a fight, they'll get one. But it's not just about me anymore. It's about the future we're all building. The people who are behind this, they're playing a game with our lives. I'm not going to sit back and let them win. The room fell silent as everyone processed Musk's words. It was a risky move, but there was no denying that Musk was right. He had already lost so much. His personal life was in shambles. His companies were under attack. But if he backed down now, he would lose everything he had worked for, everything he had believed in. It was time to make a stand. Musk's plan was simple but daring. He would go live on a global broadcast, not just to defend himself, but to lay bare the conspiracy that had been orchestrated to bring him down. His team spent the next few days compiling everything, every contract, every email, every meeting transcript, and every incriminating piece of evidence they had gathered. Musk wanted to show the world the full scope of what he was up against. As the hour of the broadcast approached, there was a palpable tension in the air. Musk stood in front of a camera, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the studio lights. His eyes were focused, unwavering. This was his moment, and there would be no turning back. Good evening, everyone, he began, his voice calm but firm. You've been hearing a lot of stories about me in the media. You've seen the reports, the investigations, the accusations. But what you haven't seen is the truth. The truth about who is behind these attacks and why they've come after me and my companies. Musk paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink in. For years, I've been told that my companies are too ambitious, too disruptive. That I should conform to the status quo. But I've never been one to back down from a challenge. I've always believed that progress requires us to break down the walls that hold us back. And that's exactly what I've done. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking with the camera as if he were speaking directly to every person watching. But there's something else you need to know. The people who don't want progress, they've been working behind the scenes, trying to suppress innovation, trying to protect their power. They've been using every trick in the book to bring me down, to keep the world from advancing. And today, I'm going to expose it all. With that, Musk began to display the evidence, the contracts with foreign governments, the secret deals with corporations, the backdoor dealings that had been orchestrated by powerful figures to keep Musk and his companies from succeeding. He showed the world the full scale of the corruption, the manipulation, and the deceit that had been behind the attacks on him. For every piece of evidence, there was a response from the public. People were stunned. Some were enraged, others were inspired. Musk's story was no longer just about him, it was about the world he was trying to build, a world that was now under threat from those who feared progress. But as the broadcast came to an end, Musk knew that the battle was far from over. The forces behind the scenes would not let this go quietly. They had already shown that they were willing to do whatever it took to maintain control. They would fight back, and Musk was preparing himself for the retaliation that was sure to come. But there was also a darker side to the response. Behind closed doors, the very people Musk had exposed were beginning to mobilize, seeking ways to shut him down once and for all. There were whispers of legal action, shadow campaigns to damage Musk's public image even further, and even rumors of more sinister plans. In the days following the broadcast, Musk retreated into his work, determined to push forward despite the overwhelming odds. His team continued to monitor the media and the legal proceedings, and Musk himself worked late into the night, focusing on his companies and the technology they were developing. He refused to let the attacks on his character derail the progress that was being made. But as the pressure mounted, Musk found himself at a crossroads. The fight had become something much bigger than he had anticipated. It was no longer just about his reputation, his businesses, or even his personal freedom. It was about the future of the world, about whether innovation, truth, and progress could overcome the entrenched powers that sought to suppress them. Musk knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. The forces aligned against him were powerful, and they would not go down easily. But Musk had faced impossible odds before. And now, with everything on the line, he knew there was only one thing left to do: fight. Musk knew it was coming. The storm was on the horizon. The weight of the revelations had shaken the world, but those who were in power, the ones whose dirty secrets Musk had uncovered, would not let this stand. The media, government, and corporate elites, all threatened by the loss of control, had already begun their counterattacks. And this time, Musk wasn't just fighting for his companies, he was fighting for his survival. In the weeks following the global broadcast, Musk's life became a whirlwind of press conferences, legal hearings, and late-night strategy sessions. The walls were closing in on him, and despite the outpouring of public support, the system was mobilizing with a vengeance. Musk knew he had to be ready for whatever came next. His first move was to double down on transparency. He released every document, every email, every piece of evidence he had gathered. There were no more secrets, nothing left to hide. Musk's message was clear: he wasn't going to let them control the narrative any longer. But the pushback was swift and brutal. The first strike came in the form of a lawsuit, filed by a coalition of the most powerful corporations and political figures Musk had exposed. They accused Musk of defamation, claiming that his public revelations were nothing more than fabricated lies designed to damage their reputations and destroy their businesses. The lawsuit sought not only financial reparations but also a gag order to prevent Musk from speaking further about the matter. Musk's legal team worked tirelessly to defend him, but the lawsuit was just the beginning. The media launched an all-out assault, with pundits and talking heads on every major network claiming that Musk was a danger to the public, a reckless billionaire who had jeopardized national security with his reckless accusations. There were even whispers of government agencies, once loyal to Musk's technological innovations, beginning to distance themselves from him, fearing the backlash from powerful adversaries. Musk's public support was starting to dwindle, and the pressure was mounting. It felt like the entire system was coming for him. But Musk wasn't going to back down. If anything, the pressure only made him more determined. He had spent his entire life fighting against the status quo, and now, more than ever, he needed to do so. His legacy, his future, and the future of humanity's technological progress were on the line. One evening, as Musk sat alone in his office, staring out over the lights of the city below, he received a message from Sarah. It was brief but packed with meaning. "We have to go on the offensive. There's no room for hesitation anymore. We fight back, and we do it hard." Musk knew Sarah was right. This was it. There was no more time to play defense. It was time for a final push. The next morning, Musk held an emergency meeting with his core team. His strategy was simple but bold. He would take the fight straight to the heart of the system. No more playing by their rules. No more holding back. First, Musk would release even more damning information, details of meetings with key figures in government and corporate interests, showing how deeply entrenched the conspiracy was. But this time, he wouldn't stop at documents. Musk would give the public the names and faces of those involved, individuals who had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. He was going to make it personal. Then, he would leverage his influence with his companies to rally public support on an unprecedented scale. The world needed to see the truth, and Musk knew that his followers, those who believed in his vision for a better future, could be the ones to turn the tide. They were the ones who would help him get through this. It wasn't just about defending his companies anymore, it was about fighting for the future of humanity, for the progress he had always believed in. And to do that, Musk needed to call on every resource, every ally, and every ounce of his determination. The plan went into motion quickly. First, Musk held a global press conference, where he announced the release of even more critical evidence. This time, he was not alone. With him were a number of high-profile whistleblowers, former government employees, ex-corporate executives, and even members of the intelligence community who had all decided to come forward, risking their careers and lives to reveal the truth. The press conference was a turning point. Musk laid it all on the line, showing the world how far the corruption reached, how deep the ties were between those who held power and those who sought to control the world's future. The documents he released detailed bribes, kickbacks, and illegal agreements, each more shocking than the last. There was no denying it anymore, Musk had been right. As the press conference ended, Musk's voice rang out, strong and unwavering. "I've shown you the truth. Now it's up to you, the people, to decide what happens next. This fight isn't just mine. It's all of ours." The response was nothing short of revolutionary. The public erupted in outrage, calling for accountability and justice. Protests broke out across the globe, demanding that those responsible for the conspiracy be held accountable. The hashtag #TakeDownTheSystem went viral, with millions of people demanding change. Musk's allies began to rally behind him in full force. His companies, SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink, became more than just businesses. They became symbols of resistance against the forces that sought to suppress innovation and progress. Musk's employees rallied around him, determined to see this fight through, no matter the cost. But the fight was far from over. The conspiracy had only just begun to fight back. Days after the press conference, Musk's security team uncovered disturbing intelligence. Several of Musk's key allies had been targeted. There were credible threats against their safety, and Musk's inner circle was on high alert. His every move was being monitored, and it was clear that the people behind the conspiracy weren't going to let him win without a fight. The backlash reached a new level when an assassin was sent to Musk's home. The attempt was foiled, but it was a clear message: they would stop at nothing to silence him. As Musk stood on his balcony later that night, looking out over the city, he knew he was standing at a crossroads. There was no going back. The people who were fighting against him weren't just trying to ruin his businesses, they were trying to destroy everything he stood for. But Musk wasn't the type to retreat. If anything, the threat only fueled his resolve. Musk had come this far, and he wasn't going to back down now. The world was watching. The final battle was about to begin. The days following the assassination attempt were a blur of heightened security, strategic meetings, and carefully coordinated countermeasures. Musk's life, once consumed by launching rockets, advancing artificial intelligence, and envisioning a sustainable future, was now dominated by a fight for his very survival. Despite the threat, he remained undeterred. He knew that the forces aligned against him were powerful, and they had no intention of backing down. But Musk had always thrived under pressure, and this moment was no different. He saw his current struggle as just another challenge, one that would test the limits of his resolve, his ingenuity, and his ability to unite people behind a common cause. He gathered his inner circle, Sarah, John, and a select few from SpaceX and Tesla. They knew this battle was going to be unlike anything they'd faced before. It wasn't just about winning in the courts or the media anymore, it was about taking on a system so entrenched, so powerful, that its tentacles spread into every corner of society. "We're not just fighting for Musk," Elon said, his voice low but intense, his eyes burning with determination. "We're fighting for everyone who believes in the future we're trying to build. We're fighting for every single person who's ever looked at a Tesla and imagined a cleaner world, or looked at a SpaceX rocket and thought about humanity's future beyond Earth." Sarah nodded. "But Elon, we've never seen anything like this. The people we're up against, these are the movers and shakers. The system is rigged in their favor. If we don't handle this carefully, they'll destroy us before we even get the chance to strike back." "I know," Musk said, running a hand through his hair. "But we're not going to fight them on their terms. We're going to take the fight straight to them, and we're going to do it in a way they never saw coming." Musk's plan was audacious. It was the kind of thing that only someone who had disrupted entire industries could even dream of attempting. He would take the fight to the very institutions that had been trying to bring him down, the media, the corporate elites, and even the government agencies that had once been his allies. First, Musk ordered a full-scale digital assault on the corrupt systems that had supported the conspiracy against him. With his tech teams from both Tesla and SpaceX, he initiated the development of a sophisticated AI algorithm designed to hack into media conglomerates and expose their ties to the corporations and government entities he had been fighting. His goal was to expose the puppet masters behind the curtain, those who had used their power to manipulate the media narrative and suppress progress. At the same time, Musk reached out to his vast network of engineers, scientists, and thinkers. He knew that public perception was a crucial part of this battle. If he could unite people under a common banner, one that represented progress, freedom, and innovation, he could tip the scales in his favor. Musk knew that people wanted something more, something better. They didn't just want to watch history unfold, they wanted to be part of it. "People are hungry for truth," Musk said in one of his internal meetings. "We've been living in a world where everything is controlled by a few, but we can change that. We have the tools. We have the power. And we're going to use them." The strategy began to take shape. Musk released another round of revelations, this time focusing not only on the conspiracy against him but also on the broader issues within the system, issues that affected every citizen, every worker, every innovator. Musk's message was clear: the system that had been propping up these powerful interests was flawed, and it needed to be torn down. He didn't just attack his enemies. Musk began to point out the flaws in the very infrastructure of the political and economic systems that allowed the corruption to thrive. He started speaking about a world where technology could be harnessed to serve the common good, where energy was free and sustainable, and where people were empowered to shape their own futures. His vision was grand, and it resonated with millions. He used every platform available: social media, live broadcasts, podcasts, and even anonymous whistleblowers from within the corporations and government agencies who came forward to share their stories. The momentum was building. But the battle was still far from over. Musk knew that the real war wasn't going to be won in the media or through digital exposés. The true fight was going to take place in the halls of power, the ones who controlled the purse strings, the regulations, and the policies that shaped the future. It was in these halls of power that Musk would face his greatest challenge. A meeting was called, a summit of sorts, gathering the top officials from the government, major corporations, and military. The goal: to resolve the crisis that had spiraled out of control, to find a way to bring the situation to an end. But for Musk, the meeting represented one final confrontation, one last stand against the forces that sought to silence him. As he walked into the room, flanked by his advisors, he could feel the tension in the air. The decision-makers were already seated, and their expressions were a mix of skepticism, concern, and cold calculation. The head of the committee, a stern-faced individual by the name of Charles Grantham, stood up as Musk entered. "Mr. Musk," he said, his voice heavy with disdain. "You've made quite the spectacle of yourself these past few weeks. You've attacked not only the institutions of this country but the very system that has allowed you to succeed. This ends today." Musk stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "You think this ends today?" he asked, his voice steady, almost calm. "No, this ends when you and your ilk are held accountable for what you've done. For how you've manipulated the system, exploited the public, and kept the world from advancing." The room fell silent. Grantham's face hardened. "You're a danger to everything we've built," he spat. "You're a threat to national security." Musk smiled. "No, I'm a threat to the status quo. And the world is ready for change. You've held the reins long enough, but your time is over." It was a battle of words, but Musk's determination was palpable. For the first time, he saw something in the room shift. There were murmurs among the officials. Some looked uneasy, others appeared uncertain. But one thing was clear: the power dynamics were starting to unravel. The showdown would come to a head the following day, when Musk's final public address went live, a declaration of his vision for the future and a call for global unity. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom anymore. He was fighting for humanity's freedom. For the right to choose its path forward. And as the world watched, Musk knew that his destiny had already been sealed. This was the moment. The battle for the future was underway, and no one, not even the most powerful people in the world, could stop it. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear: this was the final stand. Musk had chosen to fight, not just for himself, but for a new world. And the world was listening. The world was in flux. The air crackled with the tension of a revolution that was slowly unfolding before the eyes of billions. The final showdown between Elon Musk and the powerful forces seeking to tear him down had arrived. The question was no longer whether Musk could fight back, it was whether the world was ready to join him in a new era. For days leading up to Musk's final public address, the media buzzed with speculation. Would he make a dramatic announcement? Would he unveil the truth in a way that would change the course of history? People from all walks of life, those who supported him and those who opposed him, were on edge, waiting for the moment when Musk would step into the spotlight one last time. And that moment arrived. Musk stood before a global audience, the eyes of the world trained on him. Behind him, the digital screen flickered to life, showing images of the Earth from space, beautiful, fragile, and in desperate need of change. He had always believed that humanity's future lay beyond Earth, but now, he was fighting for the very survival of that future on this planet. The silence in the room was deafening. Every camera, every microphone, every person who had followed this saga from the beginning was waiting for Musk's words. "Today, we stand at the precipice of a new age," Musk began, his voice steady but full of intensity. "An age where we can choose to continue down a path of corruption, greed, and destruction, or we can embrace a future of transparency, equality, and progress. The choice is ours. But I'm not here to talk about the future, I'm here to show you the truth. Musk paused, allowing his words to sink in. He knew the stakes were higher than ever, and that now, more than ever, the world needed to hear his message. What you've seen these past few months is just the beginning. The people who control our governments, our media, our economies, they've built a system that serves only them. They've kept the rest of us in the dark. But I've come to tell you something they've tried to suppress for years, the future we've been promised, one where technology serves humanity, where we can eliminate hunger, poverty, and inequality, it's within our grasp. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. The tension was palpable. And they will fight to keep that future from happening. They will stop at nothing to protect their power. But they are not invincible. And they are not above the law. Musk's eyes locked onto the camera. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. You've seen the corruption. You've seen the lies. The time has come for a reckoning. I've spent my life building the technologies that can shape the future. And now, I'm calling on all of you, each and every one of you, to join me in the fight for that future. The crowd was still. His words were stirring something deep within them, something that had been buried for too long. The system is broken, Musk continued. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Together, we can rewrite the rules. We can create a world where innovation is no longer suppressed by greed. Where energy is free, where education is accessible, where every human being has the opportunity to realize their potential. We can build that world. But we have to do it together. There was a pause, a deep breath. Then, Musk said something that would shake the world to its core. I've uncovered their most closely guarded secret. The system that runs our world isn't just corrupt, it's been manipulated by an outside force. Something far more dangerous than any government or corporation. A shadow network that has been orchestrating events, influencing leaders, and suppressing progress for decades. The room gasped. Musk's revelation sent shockwaves through the media. For a moment, there was only stunned silence. What he had just implied was beyond anything anyone had anticipated. An outside force? A shadow network? What did this mean? I have the evidence, Musk said quietly. I've been gathering it for years, but I've kept it to myself until now. The truth is, there is a cabal of elites, far more powerful than any single corporation or government, manipulating global events. They are the ones who control our destiny. But their time is up. He turned to the screen, and a series of encrypted files began to appear on the screen behind him. These were not just documents. These were internal communications between world leaders, corporate moguls, and shadowy figures from across the globe, each one revealing the extent of the corruption Musk had been fighting against. The files showed meetings between powerful figures, coordinated efforts to suppress technological advancements, and secret deals to maintain control over the world's resources. The magnitude of the conspiracy was mind-boggling. Musk continued, "This isn't just about me. This is about all of us. The people who have been left behind, the innovators who have been stifled, the workers who have been exploited. They've kept us in the dark, but now the light of truth is shining through." The screen behind him flashed one final image, an encrypted message from an anonymous source within the shadow network. It was a confession. It named names. It outlined the corrupt dealings that had plagued the world for decades. The truth was out there, and there was no going back. Musk's voice grew even more resolute. I've fought this fight because I believe in the future. I believe in humanity's potential. But it's not just about the technology. It's about the freedom to use that technology for the betterment of all people, not just the elite few. The weight of the moment was clear to everyone watching. This was no longer just a battle between a man and a few powerful corporations. This was a battle for the soul of humanity itself. The revolution Musk had sparked had grown beyond anything he had imagined. It was no longer just his fight, it was a global fight. And the entire world was watching to see what would happen next. The time for change is now, Musk said, his voice firm and unwavering. We will not stop until the corrupt are held accountable, until the systems that have oppressed us for so long are dismantled. Together, we will forge a new future, one where innovation serves the people, not the powerful. One where the truth reigns, and where no one, no matter how powerful, can control the destiny of humanity. The room erupted into applause. But it wasn't just the audience in front of him. The entire world had heard Musk's message, and it had struck a chord. The truth had been revealed. The shadow network was exposed. And the people, who had been waiting for a hero, waiting for someone to lead them into the future, had found their champion. Elon Musk had done it. He had taken on the system. And now, he had given the world the choice. The world had already begun to change. As Musk walked off the stage, the weight of what he had just done began to sink in. The fight was far from over. But for the first time, he felt a sense of hope that had been missing for so long. There was a long road ahead, but he knew the path forward would be a path that led toward a better world, a world where people no longer had to choose between their dreams and their survival. And as the world looked to the future, it was clear, Elon Musk had not just fought for his survival, he had fought for all of humanity. The revolution had begun. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?